or I'll pass that on. Unfortunately, you can't see the warmth behind my back.
Nice.
Okay, we're going live momentarily, guys.
Okay, good. Just testing my microphone.
Okay, good morning, directors. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Committee for December the 3rd.
Move to approve the agenda.
Seconder?
Second.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. Need a motion for item B, moving camera?
Move the agenda.
Moved by
Second.
Sure, I didn't catch the seconder.
It's Will. Cole Hamilton.
Thank you, Director Hamilton. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. Item C, adoption of the minutes. Meeting held September 10th, motion received.
Move adoption.
Director Hamir, seconder.
Wally.
Director Wally. Any errors, omissions? Seeing none, anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. No business rising for minutes. Petitions and delegations. We have a delegation from Convertis Group, Circle Waste BC. At this time, I'd like to welcome Michael Leopold and Sean Quallenby. Good morning.
Good morning, board. So we have a quick presentation on Convertis Group and Circular Waste BC. I was just checking to see if Michael has joined the call right now, but I'm good to run us through if he isn't on just yet.
He's there. He's on.
Okay, perfect.
I'll run through the beginning and then Sean will take over partway through. So who is Convertis, I guess, would be the first one that probably a lot of you are asking. And Convertis is a company that's been around for a while, but just newly merged together with an engineering company based in the Netherlands called WTT. And it was the Renewy Canada assets that merged together in October 1st of 2019. The Renewy Canada assets, you will know of them as the Surrey Biofuels facility. So we were the successful bidder and built and operate the Surrey Biofuels facility. Convertis is mainly owned by a Dutch private equity firm. However, there is a significant stake from a West Coast company, which is West Coast Reductions in the Diamond family as well. So just a little background on who we are. Next slide, please. So our goals of the Convertis Group is to be the leading and most advanced organic waste processor in North America. And we want to act as a key component in the circular economy, the reuse of nutrients, and play a meaningful role in reducing methane emissions by supporting landfill diversion mandates, mainly across Canada. We partner with communities, and we have the capabilities to build, service, operate, and maintain organics processing facilities. Next slide, please. So the Convertis Group is the only group in North America that has the capabilities to both design and build organics processing facilities, operate and service and maintain. Most of our competitors who are in the operating space would have to partner with a technology provider in order to do the design build portion of it. And so with our WTT sister company in the merger to form Convertis, we bring to the table our engineering support from Oldenzaal, Netherlands. We have 45 engineers that operate out of that facility on the design build side. And then on the operate side, you're going to see a little bit later in the presentation, we currently operate 4 facilities across Canada, and we process roughly 300,000 tons of organic waste across Canada. And that's about the second largest of any company in this space. Next slide, please. So here's a little footprint of the number of facilities. So the install base of building organics processing facilities is 114 global projects. The vast majority of them are in Europe, based out of the WTT's head office, 106 in total. And they've done 3 projects in total in North America. So the focus of our new organization is really to build in the North American market and with most of the focus in the Canadian market, specifically Ontario and British Columbia, where we see the biggest needs at this point in time. Next slide, please. On this slide, you'll see some of our blue chip customers. Maybe some of these are not familiar with you. Remondis, Suez, Veolia, very large organics or very large waste processors in Europe and also in Australia. Here, Renew Canada was WTT's customer, and now we're all under one banner together moving forward. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Wonderful. Here's a couple of our hallmark projects that we did. So, of course, the Surrey Biofuel Processing Facility, which I hope most of you are aware, in Surrey, processed 115,000 tons of organic waste, mainly focused on municipalities. Our customers there include, of course, City of Surrey, Port Coquitlam, Port Moody, and Pitt Meadows. As a starter on the municipal side, we do some small amount of ICI as well. One of the unique things about Surrey is it has 3 different technologies under one roof, and that's the only facility in North America with multiple technologies in the organics processing side. So we have both composting, AD, and aerobic digestion, both dry and wet as well. Next slide, please. What our customers think, so some feedback. We worked obviously very, very close with the City of Surrey, and so we have some very nice comments from both Linda when she was the mayor of Surrey, as well as the operations manager of Viola and the Southwark project as well. Next slide.
Excuse me, Chair, the sound of the speaker is going in and out.
Yes, we realize that.
My apologies. Is that on my end? My apologies.
Okay.
I'll turn it over to Sean at this point in time, and hopefully his speaker's a little bit better than mine. My apologies.
Yeah, so I wanted to take over and walk you through some of our facilities within Canada. As Mike touched on, we do process about 300,000 tons of organic material per year, making us the second largest processor in Canada at this point in time. We work in, we have 2 sites in BC, in Surrey, and one that's much closer to, of course, Comox, Strathcona in Nanaimo, which many of you might be a little bit more familiar with. We also operate 2 sites in Ottawa and London, Ontario as well. So as Mike touched on, the Surrey site is operating at 115,000 capacity. Nanaimo is currently operating about 20,000 tons per year, and we're in the process of renovating that facility to add not only some state-of-the-art odor abatement technology there, but also to bring the processing capacity from the current 20,000 tons per year throughput to 40,000 tons, and then we are permitted to take it up beyond that as well. Next slide, please. So we have the ability to integrate some of the most state-of-the-art organic processing technologies that are available right now, including combinations of tunnel composting, and dry AD, and wet AD. All of these processes are enclosed within concrete tombs, effectively allowing us to manage not only the airflow in and out of them, but to speed up the process of material reaching the mature stage of compost. So that allows us a number of factors of control, but also prevents us from having any backlogs for material coming in the door and going out when it's finished processing. Next slide, please. So as this is a quick run over of how that process looks. We go with the waste coming in the front door. We filter it. We use mechanical treatment as far as shredding the waste so that it's porous and open and ready for the actual composting process. Then goes into the composting tombs for between 21 and 28 days, where it stays and then comes out as almost a finished product. It needs a couple more weeks after that to mature, but it speeds up the process greatly from traditional windrow or gore cover technologies that we've also seen, which allows us to do a very significant amount of material in a very small footprint. Next slide, please. So this is what I was touching on earlier as far as our odor abatement technology, and some of this is absolutely state of the art. The starting point is the ammonium scrubber, which we actually use something similar to a humidifier, but obviously much larger for air handling, where the air that's actually coming out of our composting tombs in that process goes through a humidifier, which is mixed with sulfuric acid, which bonds to the ammonia that is in the air and creates ammonium sulfate, which is actually categorized as a liquid fertilizer, which we're able to then use as an offtake, removing those particles from the air not only takes down the acidity of it for the rest of the process, but it removes the vast majority of what we know as the foul odors from organic processing. From there, that material goes through another humidifier to add more moisture to the air content and then really neutralize the pH level of it before it gets moved into the biofilters at the end through the air handling. Again, entirely a closed system. Those biofilters are wood chips predominantly because it's a very porous material, and the bacteria that we find within biofilters captures most of that those odors before it's then moved out of the end ventilation process as nothing more than humid air. This has allowed us to operate in Surrey, where we're in a very dense we're in a very, very densely populated area, and we're processing more than 100,000 tons of material, and we've been operating 3 years now with no odor issues to speak of. Next slide, please. And lastly, we've managed to build on a very strong product by working with some very large municipalities. This has actually grown since then. In addition to the city of Surrey, Port Coquitlam, Port Moody, the Tri-Cities on the Lower Mainland, we do work obviously with the Regional District of Nanaimo. We've recently started to work with the Capital Regional District and the Victoria area, and we're looking forward to continuing to grow that base of municipalities that we're able to service and partner with and divert material from their landfills and into facilities where it's reusable, beneficial product. Next slide, please. That would be the end of our presentation at this point. Again, I wanted to just wrap up, not only that we are continuing to grow, but we're very focused on working in partnership with municipalities and regional districts across BC as the need and targets for diversion grow and become more prevalent. You'd look specifically at Metro Vancouver and their targets for zero waste, as well as the environmental stewardship programs that exist. I think we're at the forefront within the country as far as working towards diversion goals. And it's something that I'm very happy to be able to present and speak on behalf of our organization about what we're trying to do to help municipalities get there.
Great, thank you very much. And we do have some questions. And first I have Director Hamir.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Really informative and very interesting to see a much different approach to organics composting than what we're looking at. So I'm just curious as to what your pricing is for receiving materials, and then also the end product that you have. You're selling that, I'm assuming, to the community, and what kind of pricing do you have for that?
I'm happy to jump in for that. So here in Nanaimo, we have varying pricing structure. So it really depends on the volume and the contamination of the waste. Obviously, the less contaminated it is, we're looking at that $90 to $95 range. The more contaminated it is, you're talking more along the lines of a 105, 110, 115. And also, again, length of time of contract and amount of volume will affect that. So I'm just giving you a fairly wide range, and that's kind of typically how we work with our municipalities on it. One of the things that the Nanaimo facility is able to handle is very complex waste, so very odorous, straight SSO, which would be on the higher end of the scale. That's the 110 to 115. But again, we're able to handle it with zero odor complaints. The offtake we do make is a Class A compost. And yes, it is sold. We have some partnerships on the islands with various companies that help us with the screening, and then we'll sell it. It's mainly sold into the, I'm going to say the industrial architectural world, but we can make amounts available for the general public. We have with the Regional District of Nanaimo, we've got a plan with them where they do some giveaways a couple times a year, so we make it available to them.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? Director Lee.
I had two questions. I missed because your mic was fading in and out. You use three types of processes of technology in the Surrey plant, anaerobic digestion, and what were the two others? I didn't quite hear them.
Yep, no problem at all. My apologies for that. So the aerobic digestion is what we call in-vessel composting, and that's where we're making Class A compost. The other two that we use is dry anaerobic digestion, so without oxygen, and that's where we're pulling off the biomethane gas that we're then putting back onto the grid. And we also use wet digestion, which basically what we're doing is we're taking the leachate, so that's the liquid that comes from your organic waste, mix it with some ICI liquid waste as well that we can bring in, and we'll put it into a fermenter, and it's also pulling off of the gas. So those are the three technologies: dry AD, wet AD, and aerobic composting.
Thank you. And the other question I had was, what sort of maximum volumes do you need to run a viable operation? How much do you need? Because even though we have a vast expanse of geography, we have 104,000 population or something, very low population, nothing like Surrey or Nanaimo. So what kind of volume do you need?
Yeah, and so we typically are at 40,000 tons or higher, and that's why, I mean, the main purpose behind our presentation is to utilize our Nanaimo facility. So our Nanaimo facility currently today sits at 28,000 tons. That's what we have under contract, and we're in the midst of expanding the Nanaimo facility up to 60,000 tons. So we've already submitted for our OMAR permit. So obviously, before we build another facility, we'd like to maximize the usage of the Nanaimo facility.
So for our regional district, if we went towards what you are proposing, then we would be dealing with Nanaimo. We'd be shipping our organics to Nanaimo.
Yeah, and what our facility really is it's able to handle your complex organic waste. And I know that the region as a whole, you're looking at multiple different streams of organic waste and how you're going to handle them. And it probably makes 100% sense to do some type of aerostatic pile for your leaf and yard waste. But what our Nanaimo facility, because of the infrastructure we've invested in with the Odour abatement, we're just about to do a $6 million expansion in Nanaimo, adding the Odour abatement and the in vessel. So really what we want to be able to do is handle your complex waste, which is your pure SSO and your ICI. So your ICI that's your commercial waste, the stuff you're going to get from institutions and also from restaurants, which will be 100% pure food waste. That's where the odor comes from, more so than your leaf and yard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lee. Is there any other questions?
Chair and Andy here. Just a question with the last response. Can you or Mr. Dyson or Mr. Rutan identify what percentage would be processed locally versus the percentage that would be transferred to a Nanaimo facility?
Thank you very much for the question. And I'll refer to Mark Rutten, who can identify the amounts that we would be processing within what is proposed and our potential ICI component.
Yeah, thank you through the CEO and through the chair. So initially our organics facility is sized for 14,500 tons. Of that, the majority is commingled food and yard waste, but there is about 3,000 or just over 3,000 of those tons are allocated towards ICI. So we could see just over 3,000 tons of ICI initially handled in our facility. And then beyond that, expansions would be required to take more. There is more ICI than that in the community, but that's the initial sizing.
Anything further, Director Adams?
I was more looking for just a straight percentage. We're talking about 50%, 25%, 10%. What's your ballpark?
Well, just off the top of my head, it's around 25%. 20% of the facility is designed, like has capacity for ICI, 80% for curbside commingled food and yard waste.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, and thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate your presentation today.
Thank you for your time.
Go ahead. Director Abram, go ahead. Are you there, Jim?
Sorry, I was late on the hand. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so of the amount that we are proposing to process locally, could all of our entire amount of waste go straight to a process like this in Nanaimo?
CO.
I'll refer to Mark.
Yeah, well, it depends on the capacity available in Nanaimo. Judging by the comments that were provided in the presentation, it sounds like they would have the capacity. So I would say, yes, that is possible.
And if that were the case, if I may, if that were the case, then would it be, has there been any look at cost effectiveness in that, that larger scale of magnitude, our material going there instead of us spending money to duplicate it here?
I can answer that, and that is that the direction of this board has been to establish its own waste production and to locate that within the Campbell River area. If the board were to ask us to evaluate that, that could be done, but this project is well on its way with us now in the process of designing the facility in order to meet the tight deadlines that we have to meet the requirements of the grant funding for this project.
Okay, thank you. And I have Director Hamir.
Just further to the questions that are being asked, I'm wondering if staff has a roundabout figure for what it's going to end up costing per ton of waste at our facility. Do you have an estimate of what that final number will be?
CO.
I'll ask Mark to address that and also consider the other costs associated with shipping, which would be extra to this process.
Yeah, thank you. So we are still developing those costs. So we're right in the middle of detailed design right now. The cost per ton, if it's a simple calculation of the annual operating cost divided by the number of tons, plus some allowance for the future maintenance and replacement of capital, then I think we're going to be in that range, the $120 a ton range, but we still have work to do on that and a report to bring back to the board. So, but I think we'll be in that ballpark.
Thank you.
And Director Colburn.
Hi there. I am just curious how established is this the plant in Nanaimo? This is to the Convertis Group. Just a date.
Yeah, so I think the Nanaimo facility has been around for the better part of, I think, 6 to 7 years. There was privately owned by some developers in Nanaimo who had approached one of our entities, WTT, back about 3 years ago. They just weren't sure exactly how to run it. They felt that they needed some additional technology. So they approached us and we purchased it in 2017. Well, it was a joint purchase with the private equity gentleman. And at that same time, we entered into negotiations with the RDN. And so we signed a long-term deal with the RDN. So that came into effect in late 2018 is when we signed the contract. So we have a 20-year supply agreement with the RDN. And as part of that agreement, once we bought the facility, again, the facility was very simplistic technology, outdoor windrowing. They'd had a number of odor complaints. And so they sought us out because of our technology. So like I said, we're just waiting on the final building permit to come in, which should be in just before Christmas. And then we're undertaking a construction project there starting in January that'll last about 9 to 10 months. And it's about a $6.5 million upgrade. And it's adding the odor abatement system. So the building will be underneath negative pressure at all times. All the air will have to go through the odor abatement system before it's dispersed into the environment. And then secondly, we're adding 4 composting tunnels as well. So that'll be able to speed up the process. Right now, the outdoor windrowing, that process takes between 4 and 6 months before you get a compost. With our advanced technology, we're able to put it into a tunnel for 16 days, do some secondary maturation. So in less than 30 days, we're able to make a compost. And that allows us to move a lot more material through the facility.
Okay, thank you. Director Ebro.
Yeah, sorry, one more time. To the presenters, were you aware of the interest by the Comox Valley Regional District to do this kind of composting, to start a project, to proceed on a project? And secondly, to the CVRD staff, were you aware of the processing that was happening at the Nanaimo level when it started? And back to my economies of scale argument, would it have made more sense at that time to have looked at joining forces as opposed to, doing two different processes in two different places? And, we all know that new things happen. We are adapting all the time. We have an advanced technology committee that looks at other situations, but this is possibly one that maybe both groups should have been talking about if you weren't. And I just would like to know, were you talking? And if you were, what was the outcome of that discussion?
CEO.
Sure, I can speak from the perspective of staff, and we have always been looking at all available options. Our conversations, for the most part, have been with the staff of the Regional District of Nanaimo in terms of evaluating alternatives. But again, the direction we receive is from this board, and this board has been clear in proceeding with an organics processing facility in the Campbell River area, and that's what we are pursuing. Having said that, we have looked at alternatives in terms of time delivery and whether or not there might be options available for getting programs up to speed in advance of this. But those discussions have been with our municipal partners on the project to date. And again, the focus has been on delivering this project in Campbell River. But I think there may be opportunities in the future for the ICI component, and that can be evaluated at a later date for sure. Or we can do whatever this board directs us to do in terms of evaluation or otherwise.
Thank you, CEO. Director Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you.
There was also a question that Director Abram had for the proponents too, that they might want to follow up with.
Yeah, of course, we were aware of the project in Comox. We did have a look at it on the first reiteration. For us, one of the counselors had asked earlier about what size we typically do, and so for us, we're a little bit more on the advanced side because of the Odour abatement system and the cost for the infrastructure. And so we only like to build facilities that would handle minimum 40,000 tons and up, because of the investment in the Odour abatement system. So that's why we thought that it wasn't of interest to us at that particular point in time. It was probably more some of our competitors that would be interested in it. And then again, we had the Nanaimo facility, and we're just looking at economies to scale to say, well, let's try to focus on filling the Nanaimo facility up before we decide to build another facility somewhere on Vancouver Island.
Excellent, thank you. Director Cole Hamilton.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was just looking at the comparative costs, and we have like a ballpark of around 120 per ton for our facility. And I believe Mr. Leopoldi said between 95 and 105 per ton, depending on the quality of the material. Just to complete those figures, I was wondering, do we have a cost per ton for haulage from us down to Nanaimo?
CEO.
I'd ask Mark Ritton to respond.
No, we don't have that cost. So that would be an important cost to understand. And then also there would be a requirement for transfer stations, both at Campbell River and at the Comox Valley, to transfer that waste into larger transport trucks. So, those costs are still included in the project.
Right. Well, thank you, Mark.
And I have Director Davis.
Thank you, Chair. My question is regarding the acidity of the compost. Do you have issues with that? And I think you alluded to that. Do you need to buffer it, and are there costs associated with that?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've found that for the most part, we're between a 7 and an 8 pH. We try to get as close to an 8 as possible. I think about 6.5 and lower would be too acidic for people to use. We started out in Surrey when we first got that facility up and running. We thought we were going to have to add sulfur pellets in order to bring it back to a more neutral pH, but we found now that we don't need it, and we're coming in just under 8 on the pH scale.
Thanks for that.
Okay, so before I go to Director Abram, I want to see, oh, sorry, I got Director Kurt, and then I'll go to Director Abram.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your report. You were saying that right now you're running at, in Nanaimo, you're running at about 20,000 tons. You've got a permit for 40,000. With your business model, how long do you see it before you're maxing out on that 40,000? And do you have room for expansion down there? Or I mean, you said normally you just do 40,000 and up. So the facility you're building right now, will it have the capacity to do more?
Yeah, so currently today, our OMAR permit is about 25,000 tons. We've already submitted for 60,000 tons. Once we've added the 4 composting tunnels, that will bring us up to a capacity of 60,000 tons. Currently under contract today, we're doing about 21,000 tons, including RDN and a few of the ICI customers we have. We just did a joint submission with a company in Cobble Hill called DL Bins. And together, the two of us won the CRD contract. And so they're going to do about 4,500 tons of CRD, and we're going to do 8,000. That's starting next spring. So that'll bring us up to just under 30,000 tons. And then obviously with the expansion, which will be complete late next summer, early fall, bring us up to a capacity of 60,000 tons. So we still got about 30,000 tons capacity.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And Director Abram.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Director Hamilton, Cole Hamilton mentioned the transfer costs and all that. And I'm just wondering if, I asked, did CVRD know, did the proponent know at the same time that we're embarking upon this project? So it seems like, we would need a more global estimate as to transfer stations, transportation costs, tonnage costs at the Nanaimo facility. Surely the Surrey facility is receiving material at, distances similar to what we would be shipping to Nanaimo. And, is that comparison something that could be used to say, yeah, okay, that's about what it costs to ship a ton? And, does there need to be a further study on this to look at whether we continue proceeding down the path we're going, or whether we do adaptive management and look at, do we join up with somebody else? So I'm still not getting a clear answer on that. I'm just getting pieces from both ends.
If I can jump in again.
Actually, if I could provide some advice to the board, and that's a political discussion as to where this board wishes to go with this project and whether you want further evaluation or not. Staff have provided you all the information we can, and that's a political decision and political direction that needs to be provided.
Yep. Director Anderson.
Yeah, sorry, my question was basically the same. It just seems awkward that it's only come up in the question and answer portion of this presentation that there's even an interest in receiving our material in Nanaimo, and we're so far along and everyone knew about it. So I'm just a bit flummoxed about how we got here and where to from here, but I'll go with the CAO's very astute comment that this is indeed a political discussion. And so after the presentation is over, if there is a will to investigate further, that's the will of the board. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any further questions?
I have one quick one.
Quickly.
Really quick. So would we need to transport, since I believe the facility that Converticus is running in Nanaimo is at Duke Point, and could we barge things? Could we barge the garbage up rather than road transport?
See.
not
Yes,
garbage
yes, it
organic
is in Duke
material.
Point. We've done no evaluation in terms of whether barging is possible or not.
But Duke Point, I mean, is there a barge receiving facility there at the Converticus site?
We do not have a barge receiving site, no.
No? Okay.
Chair.
Thank you. Dr. Adams.
Thank you, and certainly appreciate the presentation from Corinthus. I think we should just receive the report, and when we get to item 6, which is the project update for the regional organics, that's where we would get into other discussion.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you again, gentlemen, for your presentation. Appreciate it very much. And I'll take a motion to receive the report. Director Lee, second by?
Seconded, Colburn.
Director Colburn. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried.
Thank you for your
On
time.
behalf reports.
Thank you for your
First one,
time.
Comox Strathcona Waste Management Advisory Committee. Post receive the minutes for the November 19th. Moved by
Second.
Director.
Cole Hamilton.
Thank you, Director Cornfield, Director Cole Hamilton. Is there any discussion? CO.
Yes, just like to pass this on to, I'll take any questions on this particular one if the board has any, but nothing to report at this time.
Director Evans.
Thank you. And just to note in the report that there was a question around staff increases and costing. So just look forward to hearing some more additional information when we come to that later on in the agenda around the preliminary financial plan. So just really looking for some additional context for that 4% staff increase.
In the ad CO.
Yes, we'll provide more information and you'll see that the increase will be less than what was projected when it was discussed at the advisory and with following some good feedback from the participants in that meeting.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none. Okay. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 2, Comox Strathcona Solid Waste Advanced Technologies Committee meeting minutes for November 2nd. Motion received.
Move receipt.
Second. Director Evans, second. CO.
Thank you very much. And if there are any questions, again, we can answer those.
Director Hamir.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question, well, maybe more of a comment that my recollection of the meeting, the committee did ask staff to come back with some kind of framework that we can use to evaluate new technologies before we ask staff to look into them further. And I didn't see that kind of covered in the minutes. I can't recall if that was an actual, I guess we didn't make an actual motion, but just maybe to let the rest of the board know that that was some of the direction that the committee gave to staff.
And, thank you very much. And that is acknowledged by staff and what we will be doing. And good to inform the rest of the directors that that is the case. That information will come forward.
Okay, I have Director Wally.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just a question for staff. Where do we find the actual reports that go to the Advanced Technology Committee? Where can we take a look at those?
I'll just ask Jake Martins to come and provide that information for you.
Thank you, through the chair. Directors can access the reports. They are available in the director's site, which provides a listing of all the minutes and agendas. And so you can go back in the minutes and find those for the Solid Waste Advanced Technology Committee, and linked within those minutes are the reports.
Thank you.
You. And Director Anderson.
Thank you. That was my question. So second, then, having not read the report, and my apologies, could I ask for just a very brief overview of the Sustained Technology Chester Facility report? Is there anything that this board should be awake to at this time about their progress?
Dale?
Thank you very much. I'll just refer to Mark Rutten to give a brief outline for you.
Yeah, thank you through the CEO and through the chair. So we do have a staff report on this, and like Jake said, it can be accessed after the meeting, but just reading from that staff report in the executive summary section, the commissioning of the Chester facility has progressed, and they have completed their first 24-hour waste separation and biomass pelletizing cycle. They did that in March, just at the beginning of COVID. So that was a big milestone for them to operate through an entire 24-hour period and produce the products that their facility makes. But as a result of COVID, the facility was closed and commissioning ceased for several months. They did restart in the summer of 2020, and the first biomass product was sent for testing in August. However, COVID continues to impact the commissioning of the equipment, as representatives cannot travel to the facility to help commission, their components. So it's really been a setback for them, and they are struggling to get the facility back up and running. One other issue they've had is the feedstock from the Chester landfill contains more plastic than anticipated, and they've had to size a larger thermal conditioning unit, and that's kind of the heart of their technology, is this large thermal conditioning unit that does the separation and cleaning of the waste. And also they are making additional improvements to the metals separation. So they're making some progress, but it's not going as quickly as they had hoped for. They're continuing to progress their environmental permits for the facility. And that's about it. I guess they're still working. They're hoping for full startup in spring or early summer 2021. And we will continue to check in with them and further evaluate and bring a report forward once they get up and running.
I appreciate the update. I was quite taken with their initial presentation some years ago. Thank you for tracking them.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none. I'll ask anyone opposed. Seeing none, carried. Next item, item 3, 2021-2025 prelim financial plan. Motion received.
Move receipt.
Director Adams, second. Director Lee.
Second, Director Colburn.
CAO.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors. And this is your first review of the preliminary financial plan for the service. Mark Rutten will lead you on a presentation of that. You also have the report and proposal before you. Mark and the rest of staff are here, including our financial staff, to answer any of the questions that you may have. And if you feel there is more information or direction you require before receiving the financial plan again, that's the purpose of today's meeting.
Okay, thank you, Russell. So like Russell said, this is the first presentation for the financial plan. This is the preliminary plan. I've got a high-level PowerPoint presentation here. The staff report provides much more detail, and then the appendices to the report are the detailed budget line items. So next slide, please, Lisa. So first of all, just a slide here on the process. So we're in November now. We've got the preliminary budget in front of you. We're really looking for feedback and discussion on this initial budget so that we can incorporate that into the proposed budget, which we'll be bringing forward in January and in February, and then the recommended budget in March. This process is guided by financial planning policies specific to this board and to this financial planning process. The CSWM board is the authority for this service, so all of the financial planning decisions and direction come from this board. And like I said, the preliminary plan here is here for review and discussion. So please ask lots of questions if you want more information, and if you want to see changes, now is definitely the time to ask for those. Next slide, please. So this slide here is just to summarize revenue. So this service really gets its revenue from two main sources, tipping fees, which is the orange part of the pie, and taxation. And total revenue in 2021 is projected to be around 15 million. And it comes from those two main components. In the financial plan, you'll notice that we've recommended or have suggested to reduce the requisition from 6 million to 5 million. And I know that comes after many years of increasing it, but that is in line with the September COVID-19 response and renewal report. And based on the analysis that we've completed, we do feel that that reduction is sustainable across all 5 years of the plan and potentially a little bit further. But it will be revisited every year as we engage in the planning process. So that reduction does help to save a little bit of money for each homeowner. So there's that $5 million represents an $80 per year taxation amount for a $500,000 home. And that's down about $16 from last year. Tipping fees we're suggesting for the next couple of years, they remain at that 140 level where they are now. But the plan does include small increases in tipping fees in future years, 2023 and further. Also, tipping fee revenue does go up when the organics project is implemented. Next slide, please. So on the next slide, personnel costs, and I will elaborate a little bit more on this slide as was suggested when we reviewed the minutes. So personnel costs increased by 3.7%, but I'll just go through the different categories here. So there are no new staff positions in the financial plan. So we have the same staff full-time equivalents as last year. The salaries and wages and benefits includes a 2% change. So that's been budgeted. One of the line items that we've included in the budget is an allowance for sick time. So in 2020, we had failed to include an adequate allowance for sick time. In 2021, we've included an allowance of $45,000, which is in line with our actual sick time to date this year. So that's a change from last year's plan. And that single change accounts for about 1%. We've also have included an engineering analyst student position in the plan. So this is a position that we don't always fill. It really depends on what kind of workload is in front of us. But you will see later in this presentation, sorry, I just can't breathe with this mask on. You will see later in this presentation that we have significant capital projects over the next 2 years. And so we feel that this student position, although not a permanent addition to staffing, is required for the next 2 years. And they'll have a big impact on completing these capital projects. So that's included for 2021. And then there are just some minor allocation changes. So the 3.7% that I talked about is made up of the 2%, the sick time allowance, inclusion, and the student, and that comes to 3.7%. So those are the details for that change. Next slide, please, Lisa. So this slide summarizes the operational expenses for the service. This is by far the largest component within the budget is operational costs. This accounts for about 7.7 million. It is reduced from last year by 447,000. And some of the larger categories that contributed to that reduction are shown here. So the COVID response, where we really looked hard at things like travel expenses and there's other categories like education and training, conferences. Those kinds of things are not possible in the same way that they were before COVID. And so we've managed to generate quite a few savings there. Also, some of our professional and engineering fees are reduced. So all of that totals 403,000. We have closed 2 more depots and plan to close 2 more in 2021. So there's savings there. Leachate treatment saw an increase of 46,000, and that's to do with just now that the treatment plant's been running for a few years, there are some scaling issues from treating the leachate. And so we just need to make a few changes to the facility and add some membrane capacity to ensure that we have the capacity that we need for the high winter flows. And then operating contracts, we saw a small increase in operating contracts. But in total, a reduction in operating costs of almost 450,000. We have suggested that these savings be allocated to reserves. So when we brought the COVID report forward, we did indicate that we could either pass these savings along to ratepayers or transfer them to reserves. Now that we've had a closer look at it, we are suggesting that they go towards reserves and that the savings to taxpayers remain with the reduction in taxation that I spoke to earlier. As you look to the future years, in 2022, you will see operating costs increase with the implementation of the organics program. Next slide, please. A slide here on capital projects. So as I said, over the next couple of years, we've got some significant capital work to get through. The funding for this work is a combination of funding sources. There's grant funding for the organics project, and then reserves for organics and for the Cell 2 project, and then debt for the landfill closure. So you can see the 3 big projects there, the organics project at 15.1 million included in the plan, the landfill closure at Campbell River, 11.6, and then Cell 2 at Comox Valley. The plan does show that debt charges, principal and interest charges are increasing over the 5 years as we take on more debt. And then the last slide, and Lisa, you'll have to just help me click through this, but if you could just click one more time. We produced this slide last year, I think, just to show how the new landfill is constructed and why we need to build Cell 2 at this point in time, even though Cell 1 is not full and has more capacity until 2023. But if you could click the next one, Lisa, you can see that Cell 2 actually is built over top of Cell 1. And in order to start building Cell 2, we need to pad out the bottom of it with select waste. That's the soft waste from the curbside trucks. And that material has to be laid in at a couple of meters deep before we can start to put any construction and demolition debris into Cell 2. So the financial plan shows the construction of Cell 2 starting in 2022 so that it can be ready for use when Cell 1 is close to being full. And so that just tries to help explain the timing. And Lisa, if you could click once more, you can see how Cell 3 in the future will be kind of similar the way it's built on top of Cell 2. So that's the end of the presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mark. I've got Director Hamir first.
I don't know how I get to the top of the line, but that's great. Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you to staff for such a detailed report and really being able to put all of the cost savings together and provide that projection for the future. My question is around the curbside pickup in the Comox Valley Regional Districts for the electoral areas. I didn't see any kind of financial impact to Comox Strathcona Waste Management. Do you see any kind of management sort of time needing to be allocated to that, or is that all going to be covered through taxation?
So the That project is completely separate from the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Board. So it's a Comox Valley electoral area initiative, and the staff time allocated to that project is covered by the Comox Valley.
Okay, so thanks. No impact to kind of the budgeting of this function.
That's right. No impact to this service.
Okay, thank
you. Now, Director Morin.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for the report. My questions are related to the personnel costs. And first, I just wanted to note, I mean, we don't have any analysis of the sick time, I'm sure, but I would suspect that some of these increased sick time costs from 2020 are related to COVID. And I just wanted to say, we certainly don't want staff coming to work if they have symptoms of flu or cold. So I wondered if there was any, I guess, noting of whether that sick time did increase after COVID, like from kind of March on in 2020, and and also whether there's been any comparison to other staff sick time costs throughout other services. Just curious about that, but I just wanted to emphasize that I think that this is a small increase to accommodate folks who may be impacted by COVID, either with physical health and actually mental health as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything, CEO?
Yeah, just to say that the workplace is a challenging one. There are injuries or otherwise that we are managing, and I appreciate you pointing out, yes, local governments are having to respond to the matter of COVID as well. So there's many factors associated with this particular cost factor.
Thank you, CEO. Director Cole Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. I had a couple of questions just related to the tipping fees, which I guess are almost 2/3 of our revenue. And I noticed that we're planning to increase our tipping fees in line with the Consumer Price Index. And Mr. Rutten also mentioned that the tipping fees will go up when the organics project comes online. I just wanted to clarify, is the projected increase when organics comes online, is that already included within the increases that we're planning that are pegged to CPI, or is that additional?
Yeah, there's two components. So the increases that are pegged to the Consumer Price Index, that's for our existing tipping fees. So all of the products that we currently accept at the landfill, have tipping fees associated with them, and we kind of track the Consumer Price Index. And if we're seeing a couple of years with 2 or 3% increases, then we will recommend it to the board that we increase our tipping fees kind of in line with that. So that's how it works for kind of what's in place now. What I'm highlighting with organics is that currently, although we have some organics passing over the scale, once we implement the organics program and we're diverting all of the curbside food and yard waste into that program, there will be a kind of a stepped increase in the amount of revenue that we get from organics tipping fees at that time. And then, once we implement that rate, and like I said before, we are bringing a report forward on what this tipping fee will look like and the rationale for why we think it should be what it is. Once it's implemented, then it will also start to be adjusted as per CPI. So there's two things going on: the CPI adjustments for tipping fees that are in place, but then in 2022, when organics starts up, you'll see kind of a step change there for the implementation of organics and a new tipping fee associated with that product.
Okay, thank you very much. I do have a follow-up if that's all right.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And I found it really useful to see the comparison to neighboring services tipping fees, and the report was quite clear that we need to be aware of that to avoid waste leakage. And illegal dumping. I was wondering if we have an idea of what the planned increases, how our planned increases compare to the planned increases of neighboring jurisdictions.
Yeah, I certainly don't have that detail with me. It's something that, like, as we're contemplating an increase, we are also checking in with our neighbors to see what they're doing. But right now, I don't have their predictions for the future in front of me.
But that's something we'd probably look at as we come to a point of approving a tipping fee, would look at the current tipping fees in neighboring communities.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And Director Adams.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Dyson, Mr. Rutten, for a good financial report. My question is related to the organics grant that is buried in the $15 million budget. When does the time frame for that grant expire before we lose it?
Steve?
I'll refer to Mark Rutten.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we do have 6.5 million in grant funding allocated for that project. I think it does expire in 2021, but we can apply for an extension. And so we've discussed that extension with the granting program. They suggested that they wanted to see a little bit more progress on the project before we submitted our extension request. And so we're making that progress now and making good progress on the design. So I think we plan to apply for that fairly soon. And then we are confident that it will be extended until the end of the project. But I believe it does officially expire in 2021, and we do need that extension to be approved.
And Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. Cole Markinson is on the line and will be doing the organics update. So I'll just give him the heads up that if he has any more information to share with you to help answer your question, he can do that when the organics update comes forward.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson, and thank you, Chair. I will speak further to this when we get to item 6.
Thank you. Director Abram.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Cole Hamilton mentioned that there would be no, or that there would be a tipping fee increase of cost of living, but yet I think Mark mentioned in his report that over the next few years, there would be no cost of living increase to the tipping fees. And I'm just wondering if that is a wise decision on our part. If we were to go up to 2 or 3% per year for the next few years, that could avoid, a 6 to 10% increase all at once. And the reason I mention that is because in the utility that I am deeply involved in on Quadra Island, being the Kwatiaski Cove Sewer Project, I was just informed recently by staff, had we increased it by cost of living since 2012, just that much every year, we would have had no increase this year as opposed to a massive increase of about 40%. So I'm just wondering if that's, being considered, if we should reconsider it to go ahead and just go up every year by whatever the cost of living is. Second part of the question is on that roughly $500,000 saving that was presented so well and laid out so well. I really thank you for the report. Well done. It's being transferred to reserve, as I understand. And, I think, I'm not sure if that was a staff decision or if we gave political direction at some point to do that, or if it was just, considered to be a wise thing to do. But is it possible that that $500,000 could further offset the $5 million requisition to the taxpayer? Rather than reserve.
I'll answer the first question and then refer to Mark in terms of the strategy with respect to the reserves. And your first question was with respect to the cost of living increases. So our previous senior manager of solid waste brought forward a report through the advisory and to the board with respect to the strategy on tipping fees. And it is always to be mindful of cost of living, to ensure cost of living increases do occur, but not necessarily every year, but in every couple of years or so. And also to be very mindful of the communications that we need to make with respect to those tipping fees, and ensuring that there's adequate time to inform our stakeholders like the municipalities who have to increase their fees or otherwise to respond to that. So fees will increase and will reflect cost of living, but not necessarily each and every year. And I'll ask Mark to comment on the strategy, and Mariah Ford is also here, our CFO, that might be able to provide some assistance.
Yeah, thank you, Russell. So yeah, for the second part of the question regarding the transfer to reserves that we are suggesting in the report, you're quite right, Director Abram. We had thought that maybe these savings could be passed along to residents, but after further review of the plan, and especially our commitments towards transfers to reserves and towards capital project funding, we're suggesting that this money instead be transferred to reserves, and that the only savings that we can recommend is the taxation reduction from 6 to 5. If the board wanted to instead select these COVID savings, then I would suggest we would come back and say that, well, our taxation reduction can only be, down to $5.5 million rather than 5. So we're bringing something forward that we think is sustainable and achievable, but does not include passing along the COVID-19 savings to taxpayers.
Thank you. And Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. My question, I hope, is just a simple one. On table 1, we show what the tipping fees are to our neighbors in the adjacent regional districts. I was wondering, do any of the others charge a tax requisition? And if so, how much would that be per area? Because this tells us how our tipping fees compare, but it doesn't give us a better picture of how, when you add our $5 million requisition for the coming year, are any of the other regional districts charging a tax requisition, and is it bigger or greater or smaller than what we charge?
Thank you very much for the question, and we will come back with a little bit more information on this chart that provides that to you. I do know that some of them do charge. I do know that for the most part, it is not as much as this regional district, but this regional district is faced with landfill closures and capital costs associated with its facilities like no other regional district that is on that list. And it is those capital costs that really drive the need for our taxation. But we will come back with the subsequent report on the financial plan and just modify that chart to give you a little bit more information on the other regional districts that we compare to.
Good. Thank you very much. And just a short comment, I wasn't expecting, a breakdown on how much they collect in fees and everything else, but rather just a more rational, do they tax or not as well, and roughly what it is. And I know that we're different than the others. We've discussed that many times, the capital costs that are facing us in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. I've got 4 more on the list, Director McKillop.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to staff for this report. I suppose I have another question that's along the line of tipping fees. I found it useful, the pie chart that shows the kind of ratio between how much of our revenue is coming from tipping fees versus the tax requisition. And given that we've found $1 million, $1 million reduction, we're kind of moving that split between our requisition and our tipping fees a little more toward our tipping fees representing a bigger proportion of what it actually costs to dispose of waste. And perhaps we could receive some information just how our service is comparing to our neighbors in terms of, that ratio. Obviously, different services are different in size, but I think just to give us a sense of how close we're getting in comparison to, yeah, tipping fees representing what the cost of the service is versus others. I also just wanted to express some support for the decision to put those operational savings costs toward revenues, especially since a good portion of them were COVID-related savings. So it's hard to kind of expect that that would carry forward for more than, say, the next year. So rather than reducing or rather than passing that along to our taxpayers, I think it makes good sense to put that toward reserves as we have some big items coming up in the not too distant future.
And against you.
Mark, do you have any comments?
Only to say that for the first part of your question, I think that can be incorporated into the proposed report and in response, you know, in combination with the question that Director Cornfield asked. So not just, you know, what are other communities paying in taxation, but a comparison of tipping fees to taxation. So yeah, that can all be brought back as part of the proposed budget in the next iteration.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. I've got Director Anderson.
Thank you. I'd like to bring up the matter of free stores again. I know this is something that the board looked at, I don't know, 2-3 years ago or so. And my remembrance of the reports at the time was that it was determined that establishing any kind of free store presence in the more urban areas was not advisable because urban centers were supported very well by thrift stores, etc. But in some of the more rural, remote communities, free stores were considered to be really valuable. Hornby has, you know, the model one probably anywhere on the coast, and we have a decent one, although much less formalized on Cortes Island. Now, our free store has been closed since the beginning of COVID. For the first many months, it was associated with wanting reduced traffic in the whole solid waste facility here. More recently, I've just been informed that it's really up to the volunteers to develop their own COVID safety plan, but it remains closed. And so my question really in this preliminary budget discussion is, do we want to, I know it's a time of lean spending and certainly hesitation to get into taking on more things. That being said, in COVID times where people are facing real new economic challenges, and we are not being advised to go to Campbell River except for, you know, basic needs, which generally wouldn't be going to the thrift stores. It's a time when the free store would be more valuable than ever now, when people are facing economic hardship, to be able to access free materials. There's been more sort of pop-up roadside, you know, free stands, but that doesn't work in the off season. Some attempts to do, you know, car boot free store sale things, but you know, that doesn't work very well or very consistently. So it just seems like this is actually a time to reconsider whether there are rural and remote communities where we want to formalize and fund some free stores. If not, then it leaves it to the individual communities to establish new services, as Hornby has done. We've just gone through on Cortes Island a 10-year, very agonizing process around establishing a new haul tax service. So I'm very gun shy around establishing new services. Even if it's a really motherhood issue like the free store, it takes the possibility of taking something that is universally beloved in the community and turning it into acrimony. So I just would invite consideration of whether Cortes is alone in this or whether there are other rural communities that at this time of economic strain, we think it would be valuable to step in and support free stores in a little bit more formalized way. And if not,
you get it.
Then it leaves me on my own to do a service establishment. Thank you.
Any comments, you?
Up to the board, I guess.
Okay.
I think it's a question for the board as to philosophically, are you there in terms of this being a service that's taken on by this board, or is it up to the electoral areas to seek those opportunities individually?
And so I'm happy to bring a report to the next board meeting, sort of asking that question more formally. But perhaps staff could just remind us of where the staff recommendation left off some years ago in rural areas. What was the recommendation of our involvement in rural free stores?
Point of order there. We're on the financial plan. This is a new service and should be new business.
Thank you. You're correct.
I would submit that's not the case, that if we want a new service, absolutely, that would be up to the individual electoral areas. There was some discussion about whether this cost would be borne by the overall joint service and whether the service wanted to move into providing funding for free stores in some rural remote areas. That's why I bring it up at this time.
Okay, I'm gonna let Mr. Rudden quickly comment on where it was left off.
Thank you. Yeah, Director Anderson, I think your summary of the previous staff report, which was several years ago now, is pretty accurate. We did not recommend free stores at any of the major facilities because of the support that's provided in the community through thrift stores and Value Village and those types of places. And for the islands, you know, we concluded that they were acting independently and outside of the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service. So, you know, this budget does not include funding for free stores, and that's really probably all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. I'm Director Wally and I'm Director Lee. Director Wally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this the appropriate time to make motions regarding amendments to the budget?
We're on receipt at this time.
So it'll be on the next thing. Okay, I do have one question though. In the budget for electoral area A under 010 operating, there is $7,800 there for rental of the main roads yard in Sayward, and that's a contingency amount because at the present time they're not charging us anything, but that can change pretty quick. So my question is simply, does the CVRD pay that bill in the past when they did charge us for the use of their facility, or is it the SRD that paid that bill?
Yeah.
That's Mark, who's searching through the cobwebs.
And I'll actually pass it on to Jesse Lee, who's on the Zoom call, because Jesse has been working on this particular item.
Yeah, so through the CEO and the chair, Director Wall, yeah, we do pay for that. Not directly, we were paying the SRD, who in turn was paying, which was MCON before the takeover to by Main Roads.
Okay, so if I understood what you said, it was a little fuzzy there. The SRD was paying it, and you had been contributing money to the SRD to cover it.
It was a transfer. So the rental transfer was made to the SRD, and then the SRD in turn paid MCON. So
okay,
it was coming out of the 391 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When it comes time to make an amendment to the budget, I have one that I would like to do, please.
Sure. Director Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing that concerns me is that reducing the budget by $1 million to reduce the tax requisition and save a household that's 500,000 average value, saving only $16 by doing that, by using that million for that, is less effective than reducing tipping fees, because as soon as the Comox Valley Waste Management Service puts out an increase in tipping fees, the bills roll in from the haulers and they put that tipping fee way up. And I was just checking my financial records budgets yesterday, and I'm now paying $432 to haul by from waste management pickup. And every time that this board puts the tipping fee price up, we get letters with fairly dramatic increases in hauling. And I don't know if the municipalities are also experiencing this, but I think it would be a lot more valuable to the householder to have a reduction in tipping fees and therefore no increase in their hauling fees than just the $16 tax savings, honestly. I don't know if anyone's looked at it from that point of view, but I'd like that to be analyzed, because it is really hurting people when they have to pay these high hauling fees. The other thing I was wondering about was our debt servicing. In 2014, we decided to borrow $45 million for this service. And those major projects that we're doing over the next 2 years are 35.5 million. So not including the organics project, which is 15.1 million. And on table 3 on page 6 of the report, is it table 3? It shows the debt for our Comox Strathcona Waste Service capital projects. The debt servicing costs were, is that the right table? No, I'm looking at page 7. Where was I? The debt servicing costs anyway, from my memory on the table, were doubling in 2022 and 2021 from 2020 and doubling in 2022. Our debt, principal, and interest are doubling. And I would think that, you know, somehow we've got to put all of our resources available once we deal with tipping fees into debt servicing to get that down.
Do you have a question there?
Well, how can we, like, where does it doesn't make sense to me. We've got a total of 35,331,000 in the budget for the capital projects. So where do we get the 15.1 million for the organics project?
Seal.
I'll ask Mark to provide that answer for you.
Thank you. The organics project is not utilizing any debt. It is being funded by grants and reserves. So there's no debt allocated to that project. So it does not show up in table number 3 in the staff report.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I've got Director Adams, I've got your hand up. Is that just from a previous?
Whoops.
Director Adams is gone. Okay, is there any other question? Director Wally on receipt?
I'm sorry, Chair, I had forgotten to remove my hand. I've knocked it down now.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions on receipt? Seeing none, I'll call question. Is anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. Director Wally, did you have a subsequent?
I did, Mr. Chair, and I wonder, just before I make this motion, if I might just give a little background. In the past, for at least 30 years, the Solid Waste Board has always contributed a modest grant to the Electoral A, Sayward Valley, for our bulky waste cleanups. This is 3 times a year. We pick up all the big refrigerators and things that are too big to put out in our curbside pickup. And we received a letter this year from the CVRD that they were no longer going to do that. It had been 13,800 traditionally, and 7,800 of that was for the rental of the highways yard, which is no longer needed, at least $6,000. Now, $6,000 is very insignificant to the Comox Valley total budget, but for Little Electoral Area A, we only have 220 taxpayers, and it means increase to our requisition that really shouldn't have to happen. Now, back in 2012, the staff had said they couldn't remember what that modest grant was for, and they deleted it, but graciously the board reinstated it again. So my motion is very simple. I would like to move that the board reinstate that $6,000 grant to the Area A bulky waste cleanup.
Second.
Thank you by Director Cornfield. CEO.
Yep, and Mark just has some background on this too.
Yeah, I just wanted to let the board know that the $6,000 that Director Wally is referring to is included in the financial plan, and the service is committed to continuing with those bulky cleanups in Sayward. It's just that the funds are not being transferred through the SRD, but they do show up in the budget, and we are committed to continuing with that bulky cleanup program. So I don't feel like a change has to be made to the budget, but yeah.
Okay.
So if I might, Mr. Chair, I don't understand. The $6,000 isn't being transferred. That means I have to raise the tax requisition for my residents. I just don't understand what that means. Either we get the money or we don't. It appears that they cut it out. If it's in the budget, it's always been in the budget. But if we don't get it, what's the point of it being in the budget?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if the board wishes to consider this resolution and adopt or not, and staff in the meantime will provide clarity as to what certainty there is to this program or otherwise for the next meeting of the board, to ensure that if it is the desire of this board, we provide certainty that the program will continue.
Yep. Is there any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call question on the motion. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call carried.
Thank you, board.
Yep. Item 4, Waste Management Center statutory holiday closure update. Motion received report.
Move receipt, Hilly.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you. CEO.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors. And Mark Rutten will just summarize briefly this report. It's on the basis of correspondence that was first received by Comox, and then there is a late item from Cumberland. And I have heard that there may be some changes in terms of some of the municipalities having made arrangements, but nonetheless, Mark will just provide a brief summary, and then we can answer any of your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Russell. So back in October, the board directed that the Comox Valley and Campbell River landfills would be closed on statutory holidays. In June of 2020, staff advised that the stat closure would be delayed until January 1st, 2021, to allow time for the municipalities to prepare for the transition. Extensive preparation and communication has been completed by the service in preparation for these closures. The City of Courtenay has also implemented a new add-a-day schedule to adjust their community, and they've expended considerable effort to communicate the new schedule. But as of mid-November, other municipalities had not yet been able to identify a solution, an appropriate solution for this change in schedule for their communities, and they were continuing discussions with their waste collector. The staff report includes a letter from the town of Comox asking for the board to repeal their October decision to close on stats, or to allow some kind of access to the facility on stat holidays. And like Russell said, I understand that just in the last few days, some of the municipalities' collections issues may have now been resolved. So this definitely is an evolving issue. The staff report continues to recommend that the Comox Valley and Campbell River landfills be closed on statutory holidays, but does acknowledge the issues that some municipalities are having. That's everything, and I'm happy to take questions.
Joe, I've got Director Grant.
Thank you. So I'm representing Nicole Minions. I'm the uglier version, I guess, from Town of Comox. Originally, we had some issues with this, the way they were doing it. MTerra has gotten back to us in the last day or two, and we've resolved those issues. So we no longer have issue with this in the town. We're good with the motion as it is.
Yep. Director Bissinger.
I just wanted to second what Director Grant was saying. We are okay with your recommendation as suggested by staff. Thank you.
Yeah. Director Adams.
Thank you. Certainly appreciate the comments from Director Grant and Bissinger. When I first saw this come up on the agenda, I must say I was frustrated in that we cannot keep revisiting decisions that are made by the board and taking one step forward and two steps back. This is exactly why we still don't have an organics facility, and I'll speak to this when we get to item 6. And it's because we keep sending mixed messages to staff, and as a result, staff don't have the confidence in moving forward in a timely manner because the board is not being consistent. I think when we come to the board meeting, we need to be prepared. We need to have asked all the questions in advance, make decisions, and continue to move forward and not continue to go backwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Adams. Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. Well, a little bit different, I guess. My concern is that most people do not take time off of work to go to the landfill, so they rely on weekends and stat holidays to make their runs to the dump, whether it's yard waste or their cleanup around their house. My question is, can we not schedule our staff so that there is a rotating schedule to accommodate that?
Yeah.
I'm assuming that the biggest cost is paying for stat holidays, and just wondered if we had looked at the scheduling.
Thank you, CEO.
I think long before the matter came forward as a recommendation, analysis and different options were pursued to make this work. It always continues to be a cost factor for the regional district, and for that reason, amongst others, that it was brought forward. So yes, we've evaluated our ways and means of addressing this, but that was over a year ago or so when the recommendation first came forward.
Thank you. Director Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to preface some of this from Cumberland's perspective, when we voted in November, our collection day was Wednesday, but March 30th, we were told that we would be changing to Monday, which opened up a whole can of worms. Yeah, so Cumberland has switched to bi-monthly garbage several years ago, and we're running on the 8th year of our pilot project. So we're really, we're playing ball and we're trying to work with everybody here. But yeah, this is last minute that Comox has been worked out, and I don't think the same is for Cumberland. I guess eventually it just calls on the contractor to help deal with this. But I'm just curious how the first report went from $30,000 savings to $60,000 as well. So I'd like to know about that.
Thank you very much. I'll refer to Mark Rutten.
Yeah, in the first staff report, we did indicate $30,000 a year savings, and that was what we calculated for the Comox Valley site. And then the report included a comment that we would have to renegotiate with our contractor in Campbell River. So that renegotiation has since taken place, and they're also identifying about a $30,000 savings there. So the total is 60 for the two sites.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, it just looks like Cumberland's kind of holding the bag now. If Comox has got their stuff sorted out, I'm just hoping that we can sort it out.
Thank you. Director Anderson.
I just wonder if there's any capacity between now and when Cumberland is able to sort this out of remaining open only for one delivery from the commercial hauler from Cumberland on days that are required between now and whenever that is sorted, not to the public, not to any other haulers, just so they're not left holding the bag, as he says.
CEO.
And Mark.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for the question. Anything is possible, of course, but what tends to happen in these situations, if the landfill is open for municipal trucks from one community, there is just a demand for it to be open for other reasons. So I can imagine some of our other large account holders also have full bins on those stat holidays, and if they see that the landfill is available, then they want access. And that can also count for members of the public that happen to go there not knowing that it's closed and see that it's running, and they just have a bag that they want to drop off. So it does tend to creep into something larger than intended. So that's really my comment. I mean, it's the kind of thing that it's either open or closed, and it is hard to customize it for one entity.
Thank you. Director Kerr.
Thank you, Chair. And just a question to staff. How many days a year are we talking in terms of stats? I would assume that's 12 days a year. And the other question is, those are generally not on a weekend, so weekends would be still open. Those would be weekday. Just clarity on that.
Thank you. And Mark can clarify the number of stats.
Yeah, I think there's 10 stats included that the landfill would be closed for. And so it's still available 355 days, 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, except for those 10 stat holidays.
And those stats are not weekend days, those are weekday times?
Yeah, they tend to fall on weekdays or be recognized on weekdays.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then Director Lee.
Thank you. I was just wondering what kind of accommodations are made for the recycling depots to drop their stuff off Christmas, Boxing Day, up till New Year's. Last year, I went to the Sportsplex recycling depot and every single bin was stacked to the rafters, like 10 feet above the top of the bin was cardboard and Christmas debris. And, you know, it was a big mess. And I'm just wondering if there's any way without having to open the landfill facilities, if the recycling depots can be cleared out.
Seal.
Thanks, and to Mark.
Yeah, actually, I'll turn this one over to Jesse Lee, also the manager of operations.
Yeah, so as far as the stats, so the Boxing Day and Easter Monday, we will be open on those days. So that will alleviate that. We're just gonna, so provincially, stats that are recognized are the ones that we're gonna close, and that those two aren't recognized as statutory holidays. So that should alleviate the issues as far as Boxing Day.
Well, just if I could add, because because this service closed down the Strathcona Gardens recycle depots, the pressure on the Sportsplex and the Oyster River Depot are going to be tremendous, because there's going to be, there's going to be the same amount of recycling going to fewer depots. So somebody's going to have to move that material on those stat days. I don't know if it's Mterra or who, but it's going to be a huge pressure on the Sportsplex. And I was absolutely awestruck by the amount of material in those bins. You couldn't even reach up to the top of it to put your stuff in. You had to put it beside the bin.
Okay, thank you. Director Colburn.
I can get a bit better of an understanding of this issue. So if people are the haulers hauling on the stat holidays?
Gio.
So Mark Rutten can answer that question.
Yeah, so it will depend what each municipality comes up with for their own solution. So for example, and I'm definitely not speaking for the city of Courtenay, but I understand that they have implemented an add-a-day schedule. So on stat holidays, for example, on stat holidays, they would not be collecting. If your garbage day happened to fall on a stat holiday, then it would automatically skip to the next day, and everyone's schedule within the city would shift. So whenever a stat holiday happens, they just add a day to the schedule and your day shifts. Other municipalities may choose, if it works for their municipality and for their collector. For example, they could still collect waste on a stat holiday, and those curbside trucks would be full overnight, and they would deposit that waste first thing in the morning on the next day that the landfills are open. So that could work for some communities, but it really depends on what they work out with their hauler.
And that was kind of where I was going with that. Oh, sorry. as a further, that's kind of where I was going with that, and just, you know, trying to be bear aware and things like that. I'm just hoping that it doesn't cause problems to have full trucks overnight, you know, in our environments.
Thank you. Is there any other questions?
I have one quick one.
Director Lee Cook.
So this might be a Jesse Lee question, but I know that, or maybe Mr. Rattan, but I know that the haulers that are private haulers in Area D, it's not a municipal contract. Waste Management picks up most of the waste in Area D, and they never cancel on stat holidays. They always pick up on stat holidays. So yeah, what are they going to do with all of, there's 5,000 people approximately in Area D. What are they going to do with all that stuff? Do they, you know, have we informed them so that they can change their schedules and put their messages out to the public as to when they're going to be picked up?
CEO.
And I'll ask Jesse Lee to provide a response.
Yeah, so it's been communicated to all of the commercial haulers in both, you know, our whole service area. I haven't personally heard from Waste Management. They haven't reached out as if they had any questions, but they have been informed with the changes.
Okay, so as long as they know, because, you know, it might be a lot of confusion if they don't.
Yeah, so notices were sent out to all of our account holders. So.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. So on receipt, anyone opposed? Director Sullivan's opposed. Call that carried. I do have
Move the recommendation. Hillian.
Okay, the recommendation has been moved.
Second.
And second.
Cole Hamilton.
Any discussion? See none, anyone opposed? Oh, Director Bissinger.
Yeah, thank you. I think just from the conversations that we've just heard from Director Lee and Director Sullivan, there seems to be still some confusion. So I'll be voting against the recommendation just to at least postpone it, have a bit more time, whether it's, you know, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever. I think there's a lot of miscommunication so far, as well from the original staff report. So I'll vote against it.
Sure. Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. So we are on the recommendation of number 4. It was very loud and overlapping conversation.
Yes, we are.
Okay, and I won't support it. I agree with the director from Comox that we should just defer this one. It would cause no big impact if it's deferred until we look at other impacts.
Sure. Director Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Cumberland's also just looking for a postponement, really. The reports are conflicting somewhat. And as far as add a day, as soon as our day changed to Monday, that just really makes things really difficult because there's no other day from Emterra for us, apparently. So we're just really not sure where to go with this. So we'd just like to ask for a postponement to at least maybe until the regional RFP is sorted out. That seems to make more sense.
CEO.
I'd just like to clarify that it is an option for you to postpone this. It does have implications, though. It's not without implications. The City of Courtenay, and now I'm hearing Town of Comox and the Regional District for their haul in the rural areas have made arrangements, and there has been communications with our other private haulers. It may not be a large impact, but there is some impact to not proceeding with the recommendation because this has been put into place. It has been communicated over the last year.
Thank you. Director Sullivan, your hand up again.
Yes, just to be fair, we changed April 1st, and the report doesn't even really mention COVID or the impacts of COVID on municipalities in dealing with these kind of issues. So this really flew under the radar for a couple months for Cumberland. So yeah, and I think it's just, that's difficult for us.
Sure. Any other questions? Director Harbour.
Yeah, thanks. Depending on this go at, it looks like we only have one jurisdiction that's really struggling with this. And I'm wondering if there could be after this motion, consideration of another one to for this board work with Cumberland to mitigate the problem this is causing for them. So I'm wondering if staff could comment on that. That might influence my vote on this motion.
Yeah.
Mark?
Yeah, we could bring forward some options for the village, but like I said before, it won't be without implications. Like I said, when the landfill is open, it does tend to attract other service providers that also have full trucks that want to empty. So of course, we can bring forward options for the board to consider and the implications of those options. But I guess the second thing is we're also running out of time. So you will notice in the staff report that that we only have a few weeks to the end of the year, and we have to send out calendars for a new schedule. So yeah.
Sure. Director Lee.
I'm supporting the recommendation because the decision was made over a year ago. And the glitches that I mentioned that could come up, I'm just mentioning them so that maybe we can intercept them in the implementation of the decision. But I'm mostly supporting the recommendation because our staff deserve to be with their families on Christmas and holidays. And, I think it'll be a huge morale booster for our staff. They're probably the only people that we're working, not that many people are working on stat holidays. And I really think that they deserve time off like everyone else to be with their families. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Bissinger.
Thank you. I guess what I struggle with is that there doesn't seem to be like a medium compromise. If we're talking about Cumberland and potentially the waste management service, is there no option just to have a single attendant in the waste management center just to weigh the trucks or whatnot? Or could the actual drivers weigh the trucks themselves? I'm not saying that's a solution, but I feel there could be some resolution without going the full $60,000 spent that we are anticipating for savings. And from what Director Lee was saying about having people with their families at Christmas, I absolutely respect that. I do also know that a lot of people embrace working double time or time and a half or whatever it might be over some holidays. So that's definitely a bonus for some staff.
Yep. Director Sullivan.
Yeah, just to carry on with Director Bissinger's point, I did speak with an employee and they had mentioned that there wasn't any conversation that they were aware of. So I'm just wondering what that conversation looked like with the employees of the Waste Management Center. It appears that there wasn't much conversation about that.
I won't comment. We have very good relations with our union and with our employees, and communication is very good.
Sure. I don't see any other questions. So I'll call question on the recommendation. Anyone opposed? Director Bissinger, Director Sullivan, Director Grant. Seeing no more, I'll call that carried. On to item 5, Comox Strathcona Waste Management 2021 Public Engagement Budget and Work Plan. Motion received.
No receipt.
Director Lee, Director Adams, CEO.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors. And Christian Weil is on the line. She will provide a presentation with respect to this and be supported by some of our other staff.
Thank you, Chair. After receiving clear feedback from our board about the communications program last spring, we've conducted a full review working with CSWM operational staff, our GM of engineering services, and our deputy CAO to identify service priorities and set our public awareness and education goals. And these are supported by the work plan and the preliminary budget presented in the staff report for your consideration. With me today to walk through our 2021 work plan is Lindsay Fraser, CVRD's External Relations Advisor, and Lindsay leads the implementation of public awareness and educational initiatives for the CSWM. And working closely with Lindsay is Stephanie Valdell, CSWM Services Coordinator, who's working on the ground with municipal staff and community leaders to implement and educate on diversion programs throughout the service area. And we'll be happy to take your questions following the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Christiane, and good morning, everyone. If we go to the second slide. So I'll begin with covering our major public awareness campaigns for 2021, which will include the closures of the Sportsplex and Canex CSWM depots in July, as well as the second phase of our regional organics public consultation. That will present the facility design to the public and show how their input from the earlier consultation was incorporated. After initial delay that was in response to COVID-19, our single-use plastics public awareness campaign will start up again next year with a focus on at-home single-use plastics reduction in the first half of 2021. This will be our second online focused waste reduction campaign after the waste-free holiday campaign, which is currently running. And next slide, please. Back to the earlier slide. So I just wanted to point out an important goal that we've identified for 2021 is to focus on online tools in order to increase our general awareness of CSWM projects and messages. We'll be running multiple social media campaigns next year using our new CSWM Facebook page. This will include at-home diversion tips and food waste reduction strategies. The food waste program is supported by the federal Love Food Hate Waste program. We'll also be focusing on specific facility and service offerings throughout the CSWM area. And education videos will also be produced for use on social media and for posting on our website. This will focus on common issues and frequently asked questions, specifically from rural communities, and as well as some tips from at-home waste diversion. Continuing on from previous years, external relations and operational staff will participate as part of a communications working group through the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities. This group identifies every year a waste management engagement campaign that's collaborated on between all the participating members. And now next slide, please. So one of the main goals we identified for 2021 was a more efficient use of our education contractors in order to support community initiatives, especially with a focus on rural areas. So while the community education contract used to focus almost exclusively on large community events, this changed last year due to COVID. And this contract will now, going forward, provide support to both external relations and our solid waste services coordinator through a number of projects. So this includes some of the projects I already mentioned, the recycling depot closures, single-use plastics, general awareness campaigns, as well as diversion pilot projects and community cleanup events that Stephanie will touch on after me. The community education program will also offer remote video community webinars, so that will also be focusing on implementing zero waste goals for residents at home. The curriculum education program will continue to support teachers throughout 2020 and 2021 school year. They'll be connecting with teachers and students via remote video conference and also in person when possible. And they have been doing some programs outdoors and distanced. As there's less time focused on travel because of the changes with COVID, this actually allows the program to have more capacity to support high school students in the coming year, completing these high school students that are completing their major waste reduction projects. And it also means that new inquiry units can be created for older grades. So that will be developed this school year as well. In addition, we identified the need for planning to transition the compost education contract away from the Garden Education Center. Through the compost education program, we'll resume working with teachers to host Campbell River area students in the spring at the center itself. But then over the summer, we'll be permanently closing down the facility. We're recognizing that focusing on backyard composting for urban areas will no longer be required once the regional organics facility is built and municipal curbside programs are implemented. In the fall, the education program will transition to supporting the diversion coordinator on composting pilot projects. And then in 2022 2022, this contract will then be fully focused on workshops and compost education initiatives in the rural areas that aren't serviced by the regional organics facility, as well as working on composting programs for schools, as schools also won't be included as part of the curbside collection program. And if you can go to the next slide, please. So last year we piloted a really successful landfill field trip program, and this offered free guided tours for the Comox Valley Waste Management Center to students that were ranging from grades 4 to 7. In lieu of in-person visits, a fun educational landfill tour video was produced, and it's going to be posted on the CSWM website and is going to be shared with teachers throughout the school year. So I'd like to share a clip of that with you. This is just the last 2 minutes of the video, and it's showing up as black. Hopefully you can get it.
Doesn't look like it's going to work.
That's unfortunate. Well, we'll be posting the video up on the website, so it's about 8 minutes long, and it's really fun and a really great educational video. So I encourage you to check it out once it's up.
Mr. Chair, sorry, Lindsay, if I could just confirm that we will send the link as soon as that's available to all the directors so that they can watch it at their leisure.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And yeah, we're hoping that this program can continue to provide landfill tours in person for school districts 71 and 72, beginning again in spring 2021, should the health and safety guidelines allow. And now I'll pass it over to Stephanie, who will cover the operational side for 2021.
Thank you and good morning. So several items on the 2021 CSWM operational work plan require the support of the CBRD External Relations Department. CSWM operational staff work closely with the external relations staff and educators who support the communication and educational needs of the service. The External Relations Department has done an excellent job shifting priorities to meet needs of the service during the COVID pandemic, and has ensured continued support is provided to CSWM staff. Recently, staff have identified the need for the development of a CSWM branded web-based search engine. This tool will allow CSWM residents to input common terms for various household items they wish to dispose of, and the tool will provide the closest disposal facility location for added convenience. This tool would also be available to download as a mobile app, similar to the Courtney Collects app the city launched in 2018. These apps are often beneficial in helping services identify areas of improvement. The CSWM service has identified areas that would benefit from additional education or expanded services, particularly in the remote communities of Nootka and Cayuket, where transportation and logistics make diversion difficult. During 2021, the service will utilize the community educator to conduct outreach and develop supportive promotional materials to support the residents in the area and promote waste diversion. In addition, staff are reviewing other areas within the service where cleanup days or community cleanup events could benefit residents with logistical disposal issues. The CSWM services coordinator will continue to be involved with Sayward cleanup days into 2021. The 2020 operations work plan included providing additional diversion opportunities at the event, and in-person educational opportunities were provided by utilizing the community educator. The External Relations Department assists with the development of supportive promotional materials for the event. The 2020 Sayward Cleanup Days saw an increase to over 50% diversion simply by expanding the event to include collection of stewardship items, such as household hazardous waste, electronics, paint, and appliances. The 2020 July and October events were a great success, with local residents voicing appreciation for the extra level of service and the presence of Habitat for Humanity. External Relations will continue to assist with the development of the organic composting pilot programs currently being run in Tassis and on Cortez Island, and within the First Nation communities of Klahoose and Homoko First Nations. As mentioned, the service will utilize the compost educator to meet the educational needs of the program. The CSWM illegal dumping budget has been adjusted to provide continued support and additional community cleanup events across the service area. The service will utilize the community educator to create promotional and educational materials to distribute to the community to support the illegal dumping program. Despite COVID, the 2021 work plan will include annual community-wide cleanup events in 3 different communities within the service. The CSWM service will host one event in the city of Campbell River, which has recently been identified as having the greatest need. The 2 additional communities will be announced at a later date. In addition, the services coordinator will work with Homolko and Weewakam First Nations, who have reached out for assistance with illegal dumping issues on their lands. CSWM staff would like to thank the external relations staff for their support and would like to acknowledge their dedication to our programs and services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Got Director Sullivan.
Oh, sorry, that was from last time. I think my hand was still up.
Okay, thank you. Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a number of questions, so how about if I ask one and then pass it on to the next? Under the non-recycling closures, the closing of the Sportsplex, we had asked for consideration of a recycling BC facility in the south end of our community. Right now, the only 2 places you can that are available are in Campbellton area and at the landfill, which is considerable distance outside of town. So I'm wondering, have we made any progress on getting a facility established in the southern end of our community?
CEO.
Thanks, Chair, and I'll ask Mark Rutten to comment on that.
Yeah, thank you. Through the CEO and through the chair, we have sent a letter off to Recycle BC, but I'm going to have to follow up to find out exactly where we're at. Like right now, I don't think they are providing any additional locations, but I do need to follow up on that for the board.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll come back to you then, Director Cornfield, so Director Moran.
Great, thank you. Well, first of all, these kind of reports are some of my favorite because I love the work that is being done around public engagement. I think that it's so important. And the educational component and all the things that hopefully will help create behavior change. So one of my questions is related to whether there's any kind of measurement tools in terms of behavior change. I mean, obviously we can see whether some of the problems that we have that we're providing education on are getting better, but I'm just wondering if we do have any kind of more comprehensive kind of evaluation tools or ways to look at that. So that's one question. And then in terms of the composting program education and with getting ready for the organics program, I know that we have some partnerships there. I'm wondering if we do partner with Lush locally to perhaps enhance some of those programs going forward, or any other community group that has expertise in these areas. Thank you.
CEO.
Thank you, and I'll refer this to Christiane and her team to respond to both those questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll address the first question, which I believe was around metrics and evaluation. So on the public communication side, any advertising campaigns that we run, particularly those online, we are able to track in terms of number of click-throughs, how people have engaged with our web pages, with our project page, with the campaign itself. So that helps us to evaluate which campaigns have resonated with the public so that we can move forward and improve in the future. In terms of the effect of the education on the operational side, that currently is in a more practical manner working with our staff, and that's why it's important that we do this work at the beginning of the year to outline our goals and objectives and hear from our staff about what types of issues they're experiencing at the landfill, at the recycling depots, through the solid waste management plan. But we really look to them to decide what it is that we need to focus on and support our education efforts in that way. On the second point, I apologize, Director Martin. I think I may need to get you to repeat that. I believe it was around partnerships, but I was unclear on whether this was a question about operational partnerships or about marketing and educational partnerships.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking about some of the education programs, and I used the example of the composting, and with our organics program coming up, whether we are already partnering with groups such as Lush, who also do a lot of great communication in the community, and whether if that isn't the case, if there's an opportunity to maybe combine some efforts in that regard, and yeah, combine the expertise in that way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. The educational component of the regional organics is upcoming. We'll actually just be in the planning phases for that in 2021. So that's some excellent advice that we can take under consideration. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I have Director Abram and then Director Adams. Director Abram.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Back a couple slides, the non-recycled BC depots were mentioned, and I didn't quite catch which ones were being closed. That's the first part of my question.
See you.
Mark, do you want to respond to the closures?
Yeah, so in 2021, we have plans to close the Sportsplex in Campbell River and the CFB Comox non-recycled BC depot in the Comox Valley.
Okay, and that's it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for that. The second part was on the slide that we're looking at now, this illegal dumping, and the First Nations, Weewakai, Weewakam, a couple others were mentioned. How is that being dealt with as far as the cost implications, the contribution, because that's on First Nations reserve land, which is not within our taxation authority?
Yes, Stephanie, can you speak to that?
I certainly can. So our current legal dumping program utilizes volunteers. So there are essentially no costs associated with the illegal dumping cleanups that we do. We, as a service, waive the tipping fees as part of our illegal dumping prevention program, and we offer request donations. So a lot of our contract haulers that are within our service will offer up bins for free, and will cover the transportation costs. So currently our illegal dumping budget is utilized for tipping fees only.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that's on reserve also?
So the intention is to do a joint citywide cleanup. So it will, because the Homoko and Weewakam First Nations do fall within the city of Campbell River, we will utilize all volunteers that wish to participate in the city of Campbell River cleanup to collect the material and bring it to centrally located bins. And then from there, we will disperse those bins to the landfill.
Good, thank you. Director Adams.
Thank you. Very simple to Mr. Rattan. If you could forward the letter that you sent to Recycle BC for a southern end facility in Campbell River to the city of Campbell River and to Area D Director Lee, and indicate whether a follow-up letter from us would be recommended and helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Adams. Director Colburn.
Hi there. Through the staff, I'm just wondering if the budget for the outreach for the regional recycling, oh my goodness, for the regional organics facility includes outreach to the rural areas, or if that's done separately. Thanks.
I'll ask Christian to respond to that. Did you hear, Christian? It's a question as to whether the regional organics includes any outreach to the rural communities.
So subsequent phases of the program will include that, Director Colburn. So this phase is for the engagement related to our regulatory requirements. So that's coming back to the public and our stakeholders with the engagement on the 50% design. So that's what this budget item is for. And then in 2021, we will be doing the planning for direct engagement in 2022 to prepare for the opening of the regional organics facility. And the work that our compost educator is doing in the remote communities will support the education in our remote communities, as will further budgeting for the regional organics progress in 2022.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. My concern is on the public engagement around the entitled single-use plastics. And how would you define single-use plastics? Or how do you define single-use?
CEO.
And Christian, could you please respond to that?
I'm actually going to have Lindsay, our external relations advisor, supplement me on this one. She can speak about single-use plastics and our plans for engagement around that.
Yeah, so our plans for engagement around the single-use plastics is really focusing on materials and encouraging residents to utilize alternatives. So reducing things like their use of plastic bags from grocery stores, their use of plastic straws, throwaway mugs. It's a voluntary based program, so it's encouraging people to make choices to reduce their plastic use on a day-to-day basis, especially things that are only used once. So that's typically the type of materials that we'll be focusing on for this program.
Okay, I guess my concern is that we tend to focus on things like bags and straws, that straws may be single use. I cut mine up and use them to hold my leaders when I fish, so they're not single use. Garbage bags that you get at the grocery store, I don't know anybody that only uses them once. My bigger concern, and this goes back to my history of working with the BC Environmentally Sound Packaging Coalition of 40 years ago, is on the plastic used in packaging, and especially around Christmas time. And if you go and buy things that are sealed in plastics, that's the biggest problem area in the use of plastics. Is I don't see a lot of it. It's not the plastic itself that's the problem. It's what we do with it after. And I'm old enough to have been through the time when plastic bags first came into use at the grocery stores, and what a relief it was that your paper bags didn't fall apart in the rain. So I think we've got to be cautious. Also would appreciate when we do a program such as this. I know that the Comox Valley constituents have passed resolutions supporting a ban on single-use plastics, but that's not necessarily the same in the Strathcona part of the jurisdiction that we cover. So it would be nice to see the board resolution that supports it from the solid waste service. And I guess I'd like to see us get information on what the federal proposal is, because in the past, bans on single-use plastics were not really bans. There were so many exemptions that it really wasn't going to make a difference, and it was more of a reaction. I won't use my usual term of the mob mentality of jumping in on the ship. But I'd like to see what the federal ban is being proposed, and if we could get that federal proposal, I do support all the education programs, the recycling in general. I've supported it for years and years and years, and I think you guys do a great job. I just get a little concerned when we start jumping on the bandwagon on single-use plastics instead of looking at plastic use as a whole. And the plastics can be and are being recycled in BC. We reuse them again. They can always be converted back into petroleum byproducts. So there's a lot of uses for them, and there's a lot of good uses of plastic. And so I just would caution. Thank you, Chair.
Director Cornfield. And Director Grieve. Director Grieve, are you there?
There we go. Is that working now?
Working now.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, my question is through the staff. It sounds to me like a lot of these issues we've been working with in conjunction with the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities Special Committee on Solid Waste. And I'm just wondering if this outreach and the communication subcommittee is live to what's been going on, and are we willing to share our material with the other regional districts as we have up to now?
Thank you very much, Director Grieve. Yes, that is the case. We have great connectivity with the other communities and regions as a result of the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities and the efforts that were put in by the directors that were part of the communications group does meet on a regular basis, shares their initiatives, and certainly provides those regional districts that don't have the resources to undertake extensive communications like we do these types of resources. In the past, there has been campaigns that have had key messaging provided unique to each regional district, but shares in the common programs that we have. So that is ongoing.
Well, that brings me a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Director Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering, is this the appropriate item or later in the agenda? I wanted to ask about the rural composting initiatives that were undertaken. I think Cortez and Tassus to start, with a few other communities to come next. How are those going, and what is the intended phase 2 in 2021, the rollout of those? I know that there were bins placed in both Tassus and Cortez. How have those gone? I know on Cortez Island, there's a little bit of just an ad hoc volunteer group here trying to do some community education around composting. I don't know if they've been in touch really with the solid waste management service, or if the service has the capacity to provide support to that community effort. Just any comments would be welcome.
Thank you. And Christiane, from the communications end, if you can provide information. Otherwise, it may be that we just report out on what has happened and what may happen in the future in January, when we next consider the work plan and the budget process for that, which we can't answer at this time.
Thanks, Russell. I may just offer the opportunity for Stephanie to comment. If she's able, she may have some additional information to add.
So the service was committed to running a 12-month pilot program in the communities on Cortez and Tassus. But unfortunately, with COVID, we hit some delays to rolling out the pilot, and we will present a report at the November 2021 board meeting, which will give us a complete year of data collection to see how the remote communities pilot program is going.
Thank you. Now, Director Abram.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just didn't want Director Cornfield to feel alone. I totally agree with his comments. I think that the ban on single use, quote unquote, I use that very loosely, plastic bags was totally misguided. Jumped on the bandwagon by many local governments throughout the province, country, etc. I don't know of anybody that doesn't use plastic bags that are still available a dozen times. And that to me is a wise use of the resource, because if you don't use them, then you're going out and you're buying plastic bags that come in a box or a plastic container that you can line your compost bin with, your kitchen garbage bag or can with, or your bathroom waste can with. You're adding to the plastic waste, you're not reducing it. So I think it's really a misguided initiative. And the real culprit are those absolutely impossible plastic packaging things that are around everything, that, you have to use a knife and take your life in your own hands to get at whatever you're trying to get at. Those plastics, they're not being used a second time. So anyway, I just had to throw that in. Sorry.
Thank you.
Wanted to support you.
Dr. Davis, you had your hand up and took it down.
Yeah, I was just going to comment regarding TASIS. We did get our composter in the last couple of months. So there was a lot of delays, partly because of COVID and some other issues, but it's going well. I'm not sure if it's fully subscribed yet. I just had a request in with my CAO to see if it is fully subscribed yet, but he hasn't got back to me yet. So yeah, no, it's going good.
Great, thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you. I would like to not support the transition away from the Campbell River Compost Education Center and redirecting our educators simply straight to the schools. I see great, and I think that the reason that perhaps the Compost Education Center is being targeted for closure is that there's a perception that it's only about composting. I've attended some of the programs at the Compost Education Center. Maybe it needs a new name, but they do have a community garden there with a lot of activity from people learning how to grow their own food. That means they don't have to buy it in a package or at a grocery store. They can grow their own food. They have a few little black composters that they use for their garden waste on the site. They put on programs such as, how to replace wrapping paper with, cloth and reusable items for wrapping Christmas and gifts, and how to use mason bees in your garden, how to use ladybugs as a deterrent to pests instead of buying pesticides. They do a lot of education. Oh, they had a big one on illegal dumping and how to control it in the community. And what I like about compost education, they use the St. Peter's Anglican Church for free to have the public attend, or they can attend outside at the center. And it's very, I think, low cost to us. And it's very accessible for all the population that are interested in these things, and not simply just another school program. And I think that it can be operated safely with most of their facility being outdoors. And I think that the lady that was operating the compost center, Elaine Jensen, is just, fabulous educator. And I'm really hoping that we can hang on. You can rename it if you want. It doesn't, I don't think, interfere in any way with the organic project that's going on. It's much broader than that, the services that they offer to the public, and I think they should be allowed to continue.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't know if I need to make a formal budget amendment or.
We're on receipt right now.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, so I got Director Cornfield, and we're going to wrap it up. Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. Well, just to speak in support of Director Lee, but I'll save that for when and if she makes her resolution. I did ask, and I didn't hear a response back from staff, if I could get a copy of the board resolution on single-use plastics.
CEO?
Yes, absolutely. We'll make that available to all the board members after this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. So seeing no other questions, we'll call receipt on, or question on receipt. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. Director Lee, do you have a subsequent?
Yes, I'd like to move that the educational opportunities available at the Compost Education Center in Campbell River be allowed to continue through our upcoming budget year.
Okay.
And that's it.
Second by Director Cornfield.
No.
Is there any discussion? Director Cornfield.
Just that I've been involved with it since we started the first community garden up at the Anglican Church. It works extremely well. There's a lot of seniors, a lot of people in multifamily housing that participate that don't have the opportunity to grow their own food. And it covers so much more than just the gardening part, as Director Lee says. So in the last number of years, we've added 3 more community gardens around the community, and it's usually in lower income areas or higher density areas where they're being added, and it reaches a whole other demographic than just students. And to me, it covers off so much more. It provides a very valuable service.
Thank you. Director Anderson.
Can I ask from staff just really simply what is being proposed at this point from staff that this is in direct response to?
CEO.
Thank you. I'll ask Christiane to provide comment there. Thank you.
Thank you. So what we're proposing is that for 2021, I should start out by saying that the Compost Ed Center was closed over the summer and didn't reopen this year due to COVID and due to provincial health regulations at that time. So what we're proposing for 2021 is that we reopen the center for spring to allow for some school groups in the Campbell River area to utilize some outdoor education opportunities, because that's something that teachers are seeking at this time. So we believe that we're able to do that now with the health regulations that are in place. So we're aiming towards that. The proposal is that we would then close the center over the summer and transition that contract for a compost educator, which is Elaine Jansen. She's worked with us for many years. So we're working with Elaine to identify what those priorities in the community would be from fall onwards, because as Lindsay mentioned in her presentation, we know with the implementation of regional organics that the backyard composting education component for the urban areas will not be required. And Elaine does offer other workshops, as was mentioned, and we've tried many things over the years to create or increase the foot traffic in that facility, but it is very limited, and we haven't been able to do that. So we just don't have many people coming in off the street. And with the school groups, we feel that it will be more impactful as the regional organics facility comes on board to have the educator visiting those schools specifically and to help with their organics programs, because they won't be part of the regional organics. She will still be able to work on to have workshops. She would just do those and implement those within the communities, and it would allow her to have more engagement in the rural communities as well, without the constraints of being tied to the center and the expense in time that educator needs to put into the center to keep it open right now. And I do just want to clarify as well that the community garden is not run by the CSWM. So that community garden that's tied to the church will continue. It's just the portion that we use for the plots for the education for the Compost Ed Center we would turn back over to the church, and it would likely become part of the community garden for the use of the community. Thank you.
So to be clear, if the board supported this recommendation, it may not be a recoverable one in so much as this might be a permanent decision rather than just suspension of a program for some number of months.
So just to be clear, we're not proposing suspension of the program at all. It's just transitioning the program. So in the budget, we have $35,000 for the compost educator in the budget this year. And we have some money allocated for maintenance and management of the compost ed center as well. In the previous budget years, you'll note that we have $35,000 allocated for subsequent years for the compost educator as well. So it's just taking those services, those education services that Elaine's providing physically out of the compost education center and bringing her into the community. But it's not making any changes to the amount of her contract or the hours that she would allocate. The savings will be in the maintenance of the compost ed center, which would close at the end by the summer of 2021 under this proposal.
Thank you for that clarity. And what I was just trying to get really clear on was the actual physical location of the compost ed center. You're essentially suggesting that we discontinue running out of that center going forward, not just suspension of running out of that center for a summer. This would.
That's correct. We're proposing the closing down of the center this summer, 2021.
Yeah. Director Amir.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'm going to have to speak on through some insider information that I have, because I did in previous years prior to being elected teach many courses at the Compost Ed Center, and the courses that I taught had 40 to sometimes 80 people attending. They were mostly gardening related classes that I taught, and I always thought what a jewel that this education center was, and how much I wished there was something like this for the Comox Valley. And we've seen such a huge surge in interest in people growing food, supporting them to use compost in their gardens. And I would think it would be such a loss to the community if we did lose this center. And I understand like getting staff out into the community is important, but I think it's also really important to have a single place where people know that classes are held. And I'm thinking beyond COVID, once we recover, there were a lot of very popular classes held there. And I'm actually wanting something similar for the Comox Valley. So I'm going to be supporting Director Lee's motion, and I hope others will support as well, because I think more than ever, these courses, I mean, they may need to be online via Zoom for 2021, but I think people will eventually want to get back to hands-on education around composting and gardening.
Thank you. See no other questions? Call question on the motion. Anyone opposed? Director Colburn's opposed. Director Anderson's opposed.
Sorry, that was to ask a question.
Okay.
That's all. I just didn't get it lowered in time. Thank you.
Okay. So Director Anderson's opposed. Director Reeves opposed. Seeing none other, I'll call that carried.
I'm so sorry. I'm not opposed to that. Apologies, I got mixed up. Support of Director Lee's motion.
Great, thank you. Call carried.
Thank you, everyone.
Item number 6, Regional Organic Compost Project Update. Motion received.
Motion to receive.
Director Adams, second.
Second from Director Colburn.
Director Colburn, CAO.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors. And Cole Markinson is here. We'll provide an update, a presentation, and answer any of your questions. Cole is our Manager of Capital Projects for the CSWM.
Perfect, thank you. So this is an update for the compost facility. In July 2020, the design build procurement process fell through. with the 3 proponents not submitting a bid. And then in September, it went out for design bid build for, and it closed in October. There's 3 other submissions. We went through and reviewed, and the contract was awarded to Sperling Hansen. Sperling Hansen is a solid waste engineering firm out of North Vancouver. And they've teamed up with Net Zero Waste, which has currently been operating our pilot project since 2013, successfully out of the Cumberland landfill. And so we're working through a detailed design currently, and for our timeline, we're still following the proposal that was submitted in September, that we're going to be working through the detailed design, reaching back out to the public in the spring or late winter. February we're scheduled for the engagement, and then hoping for construction to commence this summer. And willing to take any questions. Oh, and for the the grants were extended until March 31st, 2022, which will be in line with this construction. It might need a slight extension as long as we're following this current schedule right now, but working with the grant office, I don't think it would be an issue right now.
Your questions, Director Adams.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Mr. Mackinson. Very much appreciate the update as to what's going on. I also want to thank Mr. Dyson for arranging for Covertus to do a presentation earlier today on the meeting, but I can't say enough that we need to get on and get this project completed and operational as directed by this board. We can't afford any further delays. Every delay is increasing the cost of the project, jeopardizes the grants, diminishes the credibility of this board and the service. And I'm going to read a quote yesterday's edition of Building Links. The Quartet Regional District over on the Sunshine Coast invites proposals for proponents for the planning, design, financing, construction, operation, and maintenance of an organics planning facility on land provided by the proponent in the QRD. So they are moving ahead. We have, for the past 6 years, flip-flopped and sent mixed messages to staff. It's long past time to get on with it, and thank Mr. Mackinson and Mr. Rutan and Mr. Dyson for trying to make that happen.
I had Director Anderson. Did you have a question?
No, that must have been from my failed vote attempt earlier. Apologies.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? See none. Anyone opposed? See none, carried. Item 7, Comox Valley Waste Management Center Recycling Depot Improvements Budget Amendment. Motion received report.
So moved.
Director Lee.
Director Evans.
Bill. CAO.
Thank you very much. And Jesse Lee will provide a brief summary and answer any of your questions.
Yes, thank you. Through the CEO. So this is just to provide the board with an update on the Comox Valley Waste Management Center Recycling Depot Improvements Project. It was put forward in the budget and to put forward a budget amendment for the 2020-24 financial plan in order to complete the project. So in 2015, an expanded bin wall project was budgeted for, but did not have a building as part of the original scope. However, it's necessary as Recycle BC requires that all the collection bags are stored indoors out of the elements. So the benefit of the project is it allowed the development of a dedicated recycling area that's not for items that are not subject to tipping fees. This will improve our traffic flow throughout the facility and reduce wait times at the scale. So the other parts is enhanced, as I mentioned, the traffic flow, our customer and safety staff, safety is improved. So in 2019, we started the project. Key parts of it that are completed now are the engineering design, paving, the drainage, some concrete for some collection bins, street lighting, and then a lock block wall for recyclables to be dropped off at. So the remaining parts of the project are a building for the product stewardship. So that's so we can enhance our items as well, along with Recycle BC, CISA collection, electronics, those types of items. So this is to further enhance our recycling for the public. So additional funds that are required to finish this is 145,000. This is included for construction and then engineering inspections and stuff like that. So the original budget was in 2015 was 455,000. And so the estimate that I mentioned 145, and that will come out of our capital expenditures fund by a transfer from capital works reserves. Is there any questions?
Mr. Jesse, Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. I guess this has no tax implications because it comes from reserves, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Then I've got to go back to a question that Director Anderson had brought up earlier about the free stores or restores or drop-off areas. And this, and I got to speak from the Campbell River experience when I go to the landfill, and I've been going there a lot lately with my move. And it really amazes me the amount of stuff that has second life that's thrown in the garbage and contributes to big chunks of our volume. At ours, where as you approach before you go across the scales, there's a turnoff area, and you can take freezers and fridges, styrofoam packaging, soft plastics, you name it, including paint and batteries and other things. And I know that in the Heartland Road landfill in Victoria, they also had like you dropped off your paint, but you could also pick up paint. And so people that don't need a lot of paint, like don't need a gallon of paint, but you can go down through and you can leave your old paint, but you can also pick up any of the paint that's there and stacked up. They did that. There was a section for toys and for electronics, and what's one person's garbage is another person's treasure. So, and it worked fairly effectively. And I think we had a concern at one time about liabilities associated with this, and I just thought, we have this project to upsize the drop-off areas. What am I trying to say? I guess I look at this as a potential opportunity to at least put a pilot in at the Pigeon Lake where people could exchange drop-off items, and so that we reduce volumes, and especially things that are difficult to dispose of, to look at that restore or free store concept again.
Okay, thank you. CEO, anything?
We've done previous reports on this matter. We could bring those back or make those available for the board's consideration if they wish.
Thank you. Any other questions I received? Seeing none, I'll call question. Anyone opposed? On receipts, carried. On recommendation?
Move the recommendation.
Second, Hillian. Second by Director Hillian. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call question. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the call carried. Okay, we've been asked for a quick break. Is everybody okay with a quick 10 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, 10-minute break.
Hey, Cole? Hey, Cole? Thank you.
Okay, directors, everybody ready? Okay, we'll move on to item number 8. Implications of extending operating hours of Gold River Transportation. Motion to receive report. Director Lee, seconder.
Second.
Director Davis. CAO. So yes, at this time I'll step away from the chair to Director Hamir.
Director Hamir, you're there and good to go.
I am.
Thank you.
And Jesse Lee will just provide a brief summary report and answer any questions, and then Lisa can help inform you of any hands up.
Great, thank you.
Yes, through the CAO. So this is just an update report following our last board meeting request for information there on the implications if we were to continue to, with the closure of the recycle depots and how that could impact the transfer station. So our recommendation is to close the depots. I think that's really important to, again, as I mentioned in our first report, just that material should go through Recycle BC. It's a better way to recycle. In conversation with the village staff, if we were to extend the hours of operation, their preference would be on the current days of operation, not adding additional days. So not the Monday or the Tuesday. That they would look at extending days of operation of our current within the current days of service right now. So that would cost about $13,000. That would include wages and some additional time for loader, up to 6 hours throughout whatever they would decide. The recommendation though is this to continue. If you look at our other transfer stations in table 1, the hours of service are listed there. As example, Cortez, Hornby Island, Denman Island, they're both around the 16 to 18 hours of service. So Gold River currently is offering 20 hours. Based on the population size, it seems to be adequate. We haven't had complaints about hours of service at this point from village or anybody. So I feel that we have adequate hours of service. So, but I'll leave that up to you to decide. So is there any questions there?
Okay. Do we have any questions to staff?
We have Director Unger.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your report, Jesse. I have no problem with closing or taking the bins away. As you know, it's going right to landfill because of contamination and all that. So I don't have a problem with that. But the community does feel by taking these bins away, they'd like to see something in return as far as operational hours open to our recycling depot. And I know you mentioned about staff would like to kind of add hours to the days. Well, since then, council has discussed it with staff, and we would like to actually see it in days and not hours of the day. Right now it's closed Tuesdays and Wednesdays. That means any of our businesses cannot use it. Monday is free day for 3 of our businesses, our field store, our gas station is one of their free days, and they have boxes that they want to get rid of. They don't have room to store them. A couple other items, Gold River is growing. Looking at your numbers of population of 1,500, I agree. But Gold River is growing. Last year we were in the top 10 on Vancouver Island for growth. So I think, we're going to continue to grow more and more over the next couple of years. This will create employment in our community, which, yes, it's only part-time, but in a small community, it's another job. Also, it'll help out with staff that we have there now, 1 person trained. So if we have another 1 person trained, they can jump in when that person is off or sick. As far as cost, yes, you'll save some money, but what if I look at, my proposal of adding 2 days to the week, the whole process, we will still save dollars at the end of the year. So I'm just looking at, like I say, support from the board that you're taking something away, and there's everything else out there is you take stuff away, but you pay more taxes, and a small community is you know, it's hard on. So I'll have the subsequent after discussion.
Okay. And was there any questions to staff?
No.
And are there any other hands up?
Director Hillian has his hand up.
Go ahead, Director Hillian.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering if someone could clarify the summary of the report says that increasing the days of operation by including Monday or Tuesday is not supported, as this will cause scheduling challenges for the village. And I'm not sure how that is consistent with what Director Unger has just stated. Perhaps I misunderstood.
No, that's sorry, Director Hillian, you're correct. When staff talked to our CEO at that time, that was his discussion. But once we went back to council and had discussion at the council table, it was suggested from council that we try and move forward to getting more days open.
Did staff want to comment?
Yeah, I was at the time of the report, I was unaware of that. It was as recommended was to additional 3 hours, so 6 hours total, with 3 hours to making 2 days, 2 days a week at their discretion at a full 8-hour day. And I think part of that rationale was their staffing and trying to find somebody else to cover, because that person would be. But you know, that part of that, I wasn't sure about that. So that's news to me. We can work with the village if the desire is to add that and see what we can come up with.
And do we know what the budget implications are of the extra 2 days if those were to be provided?
I can, yeah. So well, for 6 hours without this was 13,000. So I don't know if there'll be any more lower times. There'll be more wage, the staff time. So I have to check my notes, but it was 6 hours in staff, I believe, was about 6,000. So I suspect the 2 days would be, you know, be a bit probably up close to just over 20. I would suspect. I'd have to talk to the village and look at their hours again. I don't have them in front of me, unfortunately. I can get that too, though, for you.
Thank you.
Any other hands up?
So but Director Lee followed by Director Arbor.
Okay, thank you. And so Director Lee next.
Oh, my question is, so when I read the report, it looks like they are currently closing at 2:45 p.m., which seems to be a really inconvenient time for the public. Is that correct? Through the chair to staff.
And Jesse, if you could.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. I don't actually, those hours have been, since I've been here, have been those are the hours that the village has operated under. But yes, that is the correct.
Okay, thank you. I'll wait to hear Director Unger's motion.
I think we have Director Arbor next.
Yes, thanks. And because Hornby and Denman are listed there, I was just looking at the total hours versus population served. On the basis of that table before us, it seems to, well, just on those metrics, it seems to be okay to have the 20 hours or to consider Director Hunger's request. But I would have maybe interested in the future to look at, I don't think that's in the report, the total operating costs of each of those operations. That would be of interest to me as well. I think it's good if we're able to have a little bit of consistency across the board, but on the basis of the table presented, I think I'm supportive of Director Unger. I would have liked a bit more financial information comparing those various sites, however.
Thank you. And anybody else?
Director Anderson is next.
Go ahead,
I just
Director.
wonder if there's this viable thing to refer back to staff to come back to us in the early new year. It sounds like there's some new information from Gold River that's worth considering and a little bit more information desired. I would make a deferral motion if staff didn't think that that would get in the way of operations.
Madam Chair, from our perspective, if you want more information on this, by all means, we can come forward with more information.
Okay, so I would move that this be referred back to staff to further coordinate with the Village of Gold River and come back to the board at the next meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it, but I'm just wondering if we're still on receipt.
Do we need to have a motion on receipt first, or do we do a deferral?
You're just referring this report to another meeting. I think that's acceptable.
Yeah, I'll second.
Thanks for the clarification. So we have a motion to defer. Any comments or questions on the motion?
Director Unger and Arbor?
Yes, I'll be voting against the defer. It's already been deferred once. The only information that's new really is the discussion the council and the CEOs had. Everything else is the same that was in the last meeting.
Okay, and sorry, who was next?
Well, I would withdraw my referral motion. I was trying to support the village's efforts, if that's the will of the board.
I believe since the motion's on the table, do we have to ask for the mover and the seconder?
No, as long as there's no objection from the board, it can be withdrawn. If there's any objection, we could take a vote on withdrawal.
All right, so I'll ask the board, does anyone object to the withdrawal of that motion? Okay. Hearing and seeing no objections, then we're back to receipt. So before I call the question on receipt, are there any further questions on the actual report? Okay, hearing none, then I'll call the question on receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt of the report? Okay, that's carried. And then would someone like to make a motion?
Yes, I would. At this time, I'd like to make a motion that we close the 2 non-recycled BC bins located within the Village of Gold River, effective March 1st, 2021, and increase the operational hours of the Gold River Transfer Station to be increased to the maximum of 12 hours per week, and monitor this for 1 year.
Second.
Davis.
Okay. Any questions on that motion? Director Anderson, is your hand up or?
Just to a maximum of 12 hours increase per week?
Correct.
So that would go from 20 to 34?
32.
32.
32?
Any other questions, Director Anderson?
Director Arbor has his hand up.
Go ahead, Director Arbor.
Yeah, sorry, I maybe misinterpreted. I will probably have a concern around that level of hours, just because I think it will translate to maybe raise expectations in some of the other places, on Hornby and Denman, maybe Cortez. I understand the up to 12, so that gives some flexibility, but that's a pretty high number. And again, without the full financial picture of the cost of each of those, I find it hard to vote in favor, but it's not a hard no. I understand the intent. It just seems like a big jump. If it came to that, I think it would impact the expectations elsewhere. Thanks.
Lisa, is there anybody else with a hand up?
Director Colborne.
Okay, go ahead, Director Colborne.
Yeah, I'd be interested too in knowing the cost effectiveness of just leaving the 2 non-recyclables there.
I don't know if staff can speak to that right now.
Jesse, did you hear the question? Do you have a response?
Sorry, your last part of your question broke up, Director Colburn. Can you repeat that?
Absolutely. I'd be interested in knowing the cost implications of just leaving the non-recycle BC bins there.
So the cost of those two depots right now, with that's including the processing fee, transportation, and what we pay the village to handle them, is about 31,000 a year. But in return, if we were to, and putting that through Recycle BC, now the transportation of that recycling now becomes part of the stewardship, the processing fee as well. So it's a better product as well. It's very important. The just going back as far as the Director Arbor's question, the current cost to run that recycle depot, I don't have the other ones in front of me, but the Gold River one, which is in the original report, was 145,000 a year. So we're looking at, if with the 12 hours with equipment time, probably close to basically double what I've noted in this report, so 26,000. But as far as looking at it as from a savings perspective, I think it's more just creating a better recycled product is really the emphasis of trying to remove those depots. The transfer station hours wasn't really the intent of the report originally, the original report. So.
Okay, thank you. And who is next in the queue?
Director Cornfield.
Go ahead, Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair Amir. I guess my question's partially been answered in that we're going to save money by closing the non-recycle bins and instead extend the hours at the transfer station. I'm not sure I heard a clear answer as to whether we would still save money by increasing the hours to 32 from 20 overall. But I think if you lose the one thing, then we've got to augment it. And does that better product cover it off? So from staff, are we still going to be saving money or not?
Yeah, we wouldn't save as much at this point, no. Not with 12 hour, the additional 12 hours.
Okay, if I can, Chair, just through to the mover of the motion, are you fixed solid on the 12 hours, Director Unger, or could that be reduced, say, to 6 hours?
It's negotiable. 8 hours would be good, because then you got 2 4-hour day shifts.
Okay, and I thought Director Anderson's referral motion might have been given it, but I will try that this item be referred to staff and the Village of Gold River to work out an acceptable compromise hours.
Okay, so we have a.
I'll second.
Second.
So speaking on the deferral motion.
Yeah, just if I can, Madam Chair, I think that this is a matter that's really between Gold River and our staff. As long as the board's in favor of some compromise situation, and I like that approach. I don't think we should be adversarial in any manner, but rather work with the communities involved.
Great, okay. So we've got a motion that's been put forward. Any questions on that deferral?
Director Anderson and then Director Lee.
My hand up was up before deferral, so it's no longer relevant.
Director Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I question the whether it's correct to be accepting another referral motion right after one was withdrawn. Like,
it would be acceptable.
Director Unger has a motion on the table for us.
It would be acceptable, Madam Chair, because these are two separate and distinct motions that are being addressed. One was the receipt of a report, and this is a proposed action.
Okay.
Thanks for clarifying. So any other questions on the deferral? Okay, then I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed? And Lisa, I think you're going to have to help me if I can't see everybody's hand.
So Directors Lee and Davis as opposed. And Arbor.
And Arbor. Okay. And if that's it, then I'm going to say that that motion's carried. And I'll hand back the chair back to Director Unger.
Great, thank you. Moving on. Item 9, recycling regulation intentions, paper response, motion receive report.
Move to
Director Colburn, second by Director Evans, CAO.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and Directors. And Jennifer Ivans, our Diversion and Operations Support Coordinator, is here to provide a brief presentation and answer any questions.
Thank you, Russell. Can you hear me okay?
No, you have to speak up
Is that better?
a little bit.
All right. Thank you. Through the CAO to the chair, I'll try to speak as loudly as possible so you can hear me. As most of you may know, BC currently regulates extended producer responsibility for EPR programs for many products. And that requires producers, which are the manufacturers, distributors, and retailers of these designated products, to take responsibility for the life cycle of those products, including collection and recycling. This shifts the responsibility from local and Indigenous governments and taxpayers of the products to the producers and consumers of the products. The Clean Plastics Action Plan was released in 2019, and the ministry received significant feedback at that time, expressing an interest to expand current EPR programs and the need for other materials as well. So the purpose of this engagement, which is the policy intentions paper, was to solicit feedback on expanding EPR programs, the existing EPR programs, and also by including more products under the recycling regulation and other waste reduction policy approaches to ensure that these items are managed responsibly. So the paper specifically identified the following products: mattresses. They want to include more products under some of the existing EPR programs, such as product care, which would be household hazardous waste, electronic and electrical products, and that would be the inclusion of electric vehicle batteries and solar equipment, as well as packaging and paper products beyond residential sources. The ministry also included lost or abandoned fishing gear in the marine environment within the intentions paper, as it is a significant source of marine pollution in British Columbia, and there are complex and unique challenges associated with the managing of lost fishing gear. So the intentions paper provided an opportunity to provide feedback on approaches to improve this as well. Finally, during some public outreach meetings, the ministry expressed their openness to receive any other feedback pertaining to other EPR programs that were not identified within the intentions paper. So in the response letter that is attached, you'll see we also decided to highlight agricultural plastics, twine, and grain bags, as well as suggested improvements to be considered for the current Tire BC program. Thank you, and I welcome any questions that you may have.
Sorry, thank you very much, Director Arbor.
Thank you. It's a very nicely written response, very comprehensive. My only request, perhaps, or check-in would be if the managers of the Hornby and Denman depots have had a look at this and the letter. And I know there's always a lot of discussions in the community to how far we can extend our recycling stream. So just checking in to see if there was a input from them or in regards to that letter.
So thank you for the question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we didn't. We did speak to staff on site here and through the BC Product Stewardship Council, BCPSC, as well, I believe RCBC. So I'm unsure if any of those depots sit on any of those meetings, but we did discuss it with staff here to see if there were any products on the ground that they felt should be included and any of the issues. I did reach out as well to the CSWM services coordinator to see if anything could be added, as well as Sarah Willie.
Can I have a quick follow-up, Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so just if there is time, if there's no time, that's okay. But if there is time and we could flip this their way, maybe I can do that even. But to see if they can get their set of eyes, would be great. Otherwise, I'm really happy that you're with the comprehensiveness of your response myself. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed in the report that it makes reference to our region benefiting from an expansion of the regulation through diversion opportunities and reduced disposal costs for residents. Did we consider the cost of purchasing? In other words, companies don't pay. It's the consumer that pays, which just happen to be our same residents and taxpayers. Did we look at the affected costs, how it would impact consumers?
No, I don't believe so. I can get back to the board in regards to that. Essentially, the product, you are correct. In product care, for example, there's an eco fee paid on each individual product. So instead of, it's basically a user pay system. So if you buy it and you don't use it all, then you've paid for that product to be fully recycled. I haven't looked at, or I don't know if the province has looked at that, but I can ask that question.
Yeah, if you could, that would be appreciated. I look at it, we've got one, for instance, drinking containers works very well. In countries where they don't have that recycling fee, that's where they've got the problems. This way, I know lots of groups that collect bottles and turn them in and raise money to do their good things that they do around the community. And the taxpayer or the consumer is willing to contribute, and it really changes how we deal with it. So I support the product responsibility method, but the other thing is to look at what it's going to cost the consumer. So if it's less or equal to what we're paying now, then the user pay mentality works. So it's just a consideration that we should be looking at. So thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. And Director Anderson.
Thank you. Just a question on the marine sort of fishing debris. Does that include sort of commercial shellfishing equipment? Is shellfishing considered fishing? And because I know we have a chronic issue with foam and floats and twine and various things that are found in the marine environment that you refer to here. But I don't know how those would be identifiable by a producer, because I don't know that they're often marked as where they're produced.
Thank you. Dr. Abram.
Yes, thank you. And on that same topic.
That was a question for me.
Sorry, Jennifer, can you answer?
Yes, thank you for the question. I'm just reviewing the intentions paper, which perhaps we could provide as well. My understanding, looking at this paper, is that it is from commercial fisheries, aquaculture, and recreational fisheries. And so at this point, they are just looking for feedback on how to handle the marine equipment. Exactly what you said. It's a complex it's just a complex issue all around. And I think the ministry is looking to us, to other regional districts, municipalities, and other stakeholders on how to handle it. So it was basic feedback regarding exactly your question.
So
Does
I
it
guess
help you, Director Anderson?
so my input, I know I don't much have an opinion about whether it should be extended producer responsibility or not, but we definitely through some mechanism need to provide better marine cleanup because it's abysmal. So any comment you could offer there would be great. Thank you.
CEO through Mark.
Yep, Mark Rutten has some comment. Yeah, I think maybe I can help Jennifer a little bit here just by saying that the purpose of the intentions paper is to really reach out to different local governments to hear from them, you know, which programs are working well and which additional programs would really assist in the local governments. So for this question around aquaculture, you know, we've said we have an issue in our area. There's a lot of plastic waste that comes up on beaches. It would be great if there was a program in place that could accept this material, and if the cost could be passed along to the producers. The details of how that would happen are not yet worked out, but if Recycle BC takes this on, then they would develop a program. They would add the appropriate charges to the pieces that are, you know, the kind of the culprits, and that would be passed along to those companies in that way. And similar with mattresses and the other items that are mentioned here. So once the programs are developed, they determine how those costs are passed along.
Okay, thank you. Director Abram.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and along those same lines, like the question 4, marine debris in BC, end of life management of lost fishing gear is, you know, very misleading. It's not just fishing gear, and as you have very accurately described in your paragraph in response, that it is basically the two main aquaculture industries, shellfish and finfish, that most of this plastic debris is coming up on shores, along with a lot of netting and things that may or may not be aquaculture related. But I think that if you're going to try and get the organization to try and figure out a solution, then I think maybe you should offer them a partial solution. And that may not be to go back to the actual manufacturers of whatever the product is, but to the associations. There's two major associations that represent the shellfish industry and the finfish industry. So if those were mentioned in our response, we would give them the opportunity to pursue that and not just say, well, it's too hard for us to find the manufacturers, blah, 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 and pass it on. Because this is definitely a major part of our marine cleanups. The one that was just done in the Central Coast took an entire barge, like a huge log barge, full of plastic debris off of the Central Coast and brought it to a recycling center somewhere in the lower mainland. So, you know, this is a major issue annually in all of our island communities, and that includes Vancouver Island. So I hope that you can somehow expand and strengthen that paragraph on page 6.
Thank you. Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. I think if for a response back to the province on what they want to see, I think they need to better handle or at least better define what they say with fishing gear. If you take a look at sport fishing, it's a very small portion of what washes up, and you got a wooden or plastic plug that washes up on the beach, people grab a hold of them and it's not an issue because they take them home and reuse them or repurpose them. But definitely to clarify aquaculture, both the finfish and shellfish aquaculture, because those are big industries here. Also, the BC Recycling Council at their 2019 conference, which I was sent along with Courtney, our former Courtney rep, attended. They had considerable, there was presentations on expanding this program. So there was lots of good information that's available and provided, as well as the marine plastics. There was a whole section on marine plastics. And according to my friends that have marinas, there's no more open foam allowed in floats at all. Floats. So there's the outright ban, which would work, but it's not the manufacturers of the floats, it's those that were using them. So the ban eliminates that aspect.
Okay, thank you. And to wrap it up, Director Odour.
Yeah, thanks. Because 3 colleagues spoke on this. I am the AVICC rep on the Shellfish Management Committee. And that issue is being worked on both by the province and the feds, as you guys mentioned, but perhaps more relevant to this board, we're working with staff right now to perhaps bring a delegation at the next CSW meeting to talk specifically on that issue and a role that perhaps our board could consider playing. So it's very early stage. Unless Mark Rutten has more to add, I'll just leave it at that you can expect this will come back to us in the near future.
Great, thank you. So on receipt, anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. Non-recommendation?
Move the recommendation.
Second, Hillian.
Thank you. Second by Director Hillian. Any other discussion? Seeing none, question. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, call carried. Item 10, 2020 CSWM Procurement Activity Report. Motion receive.
Move receipt, Director Evans.
Director Evans, second by Director Colburn. Ending on CAO.
Thank you, Chair. And Russell sends his apologies. He had to step out for a minute. Karen Garrett, our interim manager of procurement, is available for a brief presentation and then any questions that the board may have. So Karen, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks, James. Through the chair and to the board. The report before you provides the board with an update of procurement activities that have occurred for the CSWM over the past year. It also provides an update on social procurement outcomes since the CVRD signed up with the Coastal Communities Social Procurement Initiative in April of 2019. A list of contracts awarded over the past year over the $250,000 threshold is provided in Appendix A of the report. Table 1 in the report highlights a number of procurement metrics that are illustrative of the types of procurement activities that are being managed through the Financial Services Department. The split of operational and capital contracts offers perspective in where procurement staff dedicate their time and effort. Public procurements are those that require the highest threshold for public competition and transparency. They are essentially managed through the Financial Services Department and are typically for medium to high value purchases. The invitational procurements listed here are for medium to low value items that don't meet the requirement to be competed publicly but are of enough value for procurement staff to manage. And the balance of procurement for the CSWM is transactional and low value in nature and is delegated to the engineering services branch. You'll see the average number of responses at 6.25 per public procurement is good and exceeds the traditional goal of receiving 3 responses per procurement. Having at least 3 responses allows the CVRD to compare bids and establish fair market value for the procurement. In the spring of 2019, the CVRD signed on to be a member of the Coastal Community Social Procurement Initiative. And since joining, procurement staff have completed full-day training opportunities, as well as a broader training opportunity for all project management staff at the regional district. When we see responses to our procurements, where we've tried to include the social procurement aspect, our observations generally include that larger, more sophisticated vendors are more likely to assign resources to social procurement considerations, our water treatment plant, for example. Further capacity building will be required amongst the vendor community. Staff have coordinated a local training session with CCSPI to be held tomorrow, December 4th, and are looking forward to other opportunities in the new year. And for the success of any social procurement initiative, staff need to be able to verify claims made by bidders. We look toward certifications and reference checks to do so. And thus far, the results have shown there's room for improvement. Ultimately, it will take the marketplace time to adapt to these concepts. And we continue to follow the initiative closely and look for further procurement opportunities to work these concepts into. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Question, Director Hamir.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to staff for the report. Karen, I'm just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on the room for improvement comment that you made around social procurement and our local vendors.
Sure. So one of the aspects that we look at is, excuse me, environmental. Like, how do companies try to achieve social values even through environmental? And right now we're seeing a lot of responses that will include just the general status quo kind of opportunities for recycling. You know, everybody has a recycling program at work, and we're just looking for something maybe a little bit fulsome. We've had a couple of really great responses where looking at car sharing programs, or companies will purchase bus passes for their staff to get them out of cars and into transit. You know, making sure that they have showering facilities, change rooms, so that it encourages them to bike to work. So some things like that we're starting to see on the environmental side. When it comes to the more social aspect and looking at hiring from certain groups of people, that we need to see a little bit more improvement there. And I think a little bit more education would help our vendor community to understand exactly what it is that we're looking for. So we're going to be exploring that option, hopefully with the CCSPI soon, and see what we can do to promote that.
Great,
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the report. On report, call question, is anyone opposed? Seeing none, call carried. Item 11, Comox Strathcona Waste Management Report. Motion received.
Move receipt.
Director Cole Hamilton,
Second.
Director Cornfield. To James.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and staff are available to answer any questions that the board might have on the management report.
Any questions? Seeing none, call question. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. Bylaws, resolutions, nothing under new business. City Camp River request to waive fees for landfill yard waste drop-off. Motion received. Director Lee, second.
Hillian, second.
Director Hillian, and the CAO, James.
This correspondence is included on the agenda from the City of Campbell River, and it is here for the board's consideration and receipt.
Do you have questions? Seeing none. Oh, Director Lee.
Is it the intention of the City of Campbell River to be the only jurisdiction that will be served by that could be served by a possible yard waste drop-off in the Comox Strathcona area? That's through the chair to, I guess,
Staff?
staff or the mayor.
I think if I can, I think that there would have to be some research and understanding undertaken, perhaps a report back to the board if need be. I think there are some implications of this kind of an action, and it would have to be fully understood and some dialogue before any certainty can be provided.
Then I would like to refer this back to staff for a report back on possible solutions to this.
Do we have a motion to refer back to staff? Do I have a seconder?
Sorry, we're on receipt. I'll have a subsequent.
Okay, thank you. We're on receipt. Is there anything else on receipt? Director Hamir?
My question was actually around like a budget implication for this particular item, but if it's referred to staff, then I think staff will be working on it. So.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other question on receipt? Seeing none, I'll call question. All in favor? Sorry, anyone opposed? Seeing none, call carried. Director Adams?
Thank you. And subsequent to refer to staff for a report recommendations on implementing the proposal.
Second.
Second by Director Cornfield.
If I can just speak, just to address Director Lee's comment, as the landfill site is a regional district, it would be open for all regional district participants.
Thank you. Other discussion? Call question? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, call carried. The addendum item was the letter from Mayor from Cumberland, correct? Was it? Okay, so we don't have to do it? Okay, so motion receive.
Move that the addenda be considered.
Thank you. Thank you. And staff.
Mr. Chair, actually, this motion is to consider the addendum. Then if the board approves this motion, then a motion to receive the correspondence would be in order.
Thank you. Director Sullivan.
Move receipt.
Thank you.
Second,
Question
Davis.
on the addendum.
Question on the addendum, sorry. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. Now motion received from Director Sullivan. Second by
Davis.
Director Davis. Anything to add, staff?
No, Mr. Chair, I think this topic was discussed earlier on the agenda. I do see Mr. Director Sullivan's hand up. I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything.
Yes, I would like to.
Okay, go ahead, Director Sullivan.
Yeah, as we've discussed this at length earlier, the change was made for Cumberland 5 months after this original report was received, and the report stated minimal to no public impact, and also that staff would assist in the changes. And we just really haven't had that much time. And I'd like to make a motion that CSWM work with Cumberland and the contractor on options to mitigate the impacts of this new decision.
Second, Arbor.
I'll second, Bissinger.
We're still on receipt.
Yes, thank you.
Once we're done receipt, Director Sullivan, I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else on receipt? Seeing none, question, anyone opposed? Seeing none, call carried. Director Sullivan.
Yeah, I'd just like to make the motion that CSWM work with Cumberland and the contractor to mitigate the options of this, the negative options of this decision.
Arbor, second.
Thank you. Second by Director Arbor. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, call question. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, I call carried. Any immediate questions?
Thank you very much.
Other than that, take a motion to terminate.
We have in camera, Mr. Chair.
In camera.
Sorry.
Move that we adjourn to in camera.
Motion to adjourn the camera. Second by Director Cornfield. Anyone opposed?